the frozen king who couldn't feel until a starving girl offered him bread. For 300 years, an immortal king ruled without a heartbeat. No warmth, no feeling, no mercy. Noble daughters brought gold and armies, desperate to become his queen, but he felt nothing. Then a battered outcast named Lyra stumbled into his throne room with empty hands and a half-eaten crust of bread. When their fingers touched, the impossible happened. The dead king felt alive. But someone in his fortress wanted him to stay frozen forever. Stay until the end to see how a girl with nothing shattered a 3-century curse. And if you're watching from New York, London, Tokyo, or anywhere in between, drop your city in the comments. Hit that like button, and let's begin. The grand hall of Vexmore Fortress stank of desperation masked by perfume. Darien Vexmore sat motionless on the black stone throne, his pale fingers resting against the armrests like carved marble. 3 centuries had passed since he'd felt the grain of wood beneath his skin. The throne could have been made of iron or ice or human bone. It would have felt exactly the same. Which is to say, it felt like nothing at all. Around him, the ritual unfolded as it had 1,000 times before. "The House of Grendale offers 7,000 gold marks," announced a sweating herald, his voice cracking on the last syllable. 400 soldiers, and the Lady Serena Grendale, of pure bloodline and sufficient beauty to warm any king's bed, finished Lord Grendale himself, a barrel-chested man with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Serena stepped forward, draped in silk the color of fresh cream. Her dark hair had been woven with pearls. She was objectively beautiful. Darien's mind catalogued this the way one might note the weather: cloudy, mild, unremarkable. She knelt before the throne, extending a velvet pillow. On it rested a crown of white gold studded with diamonds that caught the torchlight. "My king," she said, her voice honey-smooth and rehearsed, "I offer myself as your queen, my house's wealth, my father's armies, and my unwavering loyalty." Darien looked at her. He felt nothing. "Rise," he said. His voice came out flat, mechanical. "Your offer is noted." Serena's smile faltered, just for a moment. Then she stood, retreating to join the line of rejected daughters along the eastern wall. 15 of them now, all draped in their house's finest, all wearing the same expression, hope curdling into humiliation. The next candidate approached. Then the next. Gold, land, soldiers, breeding rights, strategic alliances. They offered everything a king could want. Darien felt nothing. He'd stopped expecting to feel anything around year 73. The curse had been specific about that. The House of Darkmere offers. The massive oak doors exploded inward with a crack that made half the hall flinch. 4 royal guards stumbled through, dragging something between them. Not something. Someone. A girl, her wrists bound with rough rope, her clothes more whole than fabric. Blood streaked down her temple from a gash above her eyebrow. "Apologies, my king." The captain of the guard, a grizzled wolf shifter named Torvin, looked genuinely flustered. "We caught this vagrant attempting to scale the eastern wall. She insists—" He paused, as if embarrassed by what he was about to say. "She insists she's here for the selection." A ripple of laughter rolled through the hall. The girl raised her head. Darien found himself looking into eyes the color of storm clouds, gray shot through with silver, furious and unafraid. Her face was all sharp angles and hunger. Dirt streaked her cheeks. Her hair, matted and dark with filth, might have been brown or black or something in between. She looked half dead. She looked furious. "I'm not a vagrant," she said. Her voice came out rough, like she hadn't used it in days. "I'm here to make an offer." More laughter. Lord Grendale's boomed above the rest. "An offer!" he wheezed. "Girl, you look like you haven't eaten in a week. What could you possibly offer our king?" The girl's eyes never left Darien's face. "Myself," she said simply. The laughter died. Darien studied her. Unlike everyone else in this hall, she wasn't performing, wasn't calculating, wasn't trying to angle for advantage. She stood there in rope and rags, bleeding and shaking, whether from cold or hunger or fury, he couldn't tell, and met his gaze like an equal. Something flickered in his chest, gone before he could name it. "Your name," he said. "Lyra." A pause. "Lyra Ashen. House Ashen? Velka Draven's voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk. The king's chief advisor stepped forward from her position behind the throne, her silver hair gleaming in the torchlight. Her face was beautiful in the way a frozen lake is beautiful, perfect, elegant, and utterly cold. There is no house ashen in any territory under the crown's domain. I know. Lyra didn't look at Velka. Her eyes stayed on Darian. I don't have a house. I don't have gold or armies or land. I don't have a bloodline worth mentioning. I don't even have a wolf. The hall erupted. Wolfless, someone gasped. Impossible. Why hasn't she been called? Silence. Darian didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The single word landed like a stone in still water, and the hall went quiet. He leaned forward slightly, the first voluntary movement he'd made in hours. You claim to offer yourself, but you have nothing. You are nothing by the laws of this land. So I'll ask again, what exactly are you offering? Lyra reached into the tattered remains of her shirt. Every guard in the hall tensed. She pulled out a piece of bread. It was small, stale, crumbling at the edges. It looked like it had been dropped in mud at least once. Someone had bitten off roughly half of it. Lyra held it out. This, she said, it's all I have left. I was going to eat it on the way here, but I thought... She stopped, swallowed, started again. I thought maybe a king who has everything might want to know what it feels like to have nothing, to be starving and still choose to give instead of take. The hall was silent. Darian stared at the bread, at her dirt-caked fingers, at the defiance burning in her eyes. Ridiculous, Velka said coldly. Captain Torvin, remove this creature from... Bring her forward. Velka's mouth snapped shut. Torvin looked uncertain. My king? You heard me. The guards exchanged glances. Then they hauled Lyra up the steps toward the throne. Her legs buckled halfway up, hunger or injury or both, but she forced herself upright, refusing to be dragged. When she reached the throne, she didn't kneel. She held out the bread. Darian looked at it, at her, at the way her hand shook just slightly, despite the steel in her spine. He reached out and took the bread from her palm. Their fingers touched. Heat. It slammed into him like a physical blow, burning up his arm, flooding through his chest, igniting nerves that had been dead for 300 years. Color exploded across his vision. The torches weren't just light anymore. They were orange, yellow, red, dancing and alive. The smell of smoke and sweat and perfume crashed over him. The taste of dust in his mouth became real, became something, became sensation. Overwhelming, terrifying. Darian jerked his hand back. The warmth vanished. Color bled away. The world flattened back into the familiar gray nothing. But for one impossible second, he had felt. Lyra was staring at him, her eyes wide. You felt that. It wasn't a question. I don't know what you're talking about, Darian said. His voice came out too controlled, too careful. Liar. Lyra took a step closer. Your hand. When you touched me, you felt something. I saw your face change. My king, Velka said sharply. This vagrant is clearly unwell, delusional. She should be removed to the dungeons until she stays. Every head in the hall turned. Darian set the piece of bread on the arm of his throne. It looked absurd there, crumbling against ancient stone. The selection is concluded, he announced. Lyra Ashen will remain in the fortress as a guest. The rest of you are dismissed. Chaos. My king, this is unacceptable. She's wolfless. She has no right. Dismissed. The word cracked through the hall like thunder. Darian rose from his throne, the first time he'd stood during a selection in decades. He was tall, broad-shouldered, built like a warrior despite centuries of stillness. His presence filled the space. The nobles retreated. One by one, they filed out. The rejected daughters, the ambitious fathers, the calculating advisors, until only Darian, Velka, Lyra, and the guards remained. Velka's face was a mask of perfect composure. But Darian had known her for 2 centuries. He could read the fury in the set of her shoulders. My king, she said softly. Might I have a word in private? No. Velka's jaw tightened. This girl is dangerous. She's half-starved and injured. Precisely. We know nothing about her. Where she comes from. What she wants. Why she... Captain Torvin. Darian turned to the guard captain. Take Miss Ashen to the East Tower. 3rd floor. See that she's given food, clean clothes, and medical attention. Torvin hesitated. My king, the East Tower rooms are reserved for honored guests, I'm aware. Darian's eyes met Lyra's. She was still staring at him with that unsettling intensity, like she could see through 3 centuries of carefully constructed ice. Make her comfortable. Lyra opened her mouth. Whether to argue or thank him, Darian didn't wait to find out. He turned and strode toward the private door behind the throne, Velka's clicking footsteps following close behind. He didn't look back. He couldn't, because if he did, he might reach out and touch her again. And if he did that, he might remember what it felt like to be alive. The East Tower room was bigger than any space Lyra had ever occupied, which wasn't saying much. For the past 6 years, home had been whatever dry corner she could find, under bridges, in abandoned barns, once in a fox den that its previous occupant had been kind enough to vacate. Before that, the memories got hazy. Pain, screaming, fire, being dragged through woods by rough hands while someone shouted that she was cursed, that she should have been drowned at birth, that keeping her alive would doom them all. She'd been 11. She'd believed them for a long time. Now she stood in the center of a room with actual furniture, a bed with a mattress, a table, 2 chairs, a wardrobe, and felt like she'd stumbled into someone else's life. A servant had brought water, food, bandages, then fled, like Lyra might be contagious. Maybe she was. Lyra peeled off her ruined shirt, hissing as fabric tore away from half-healed wounds. The cuts weren't deep. She'd gotten better at dodging over the years, but there were a lot of them. Souvenirs from her climb up the fortress wall, from the guards who'd caught her, from the pack of territorial wolves who'd chased her 3 days ago when she'd crossed their hunting ground without permission. Being wolfless made you prey. She'd learned that early. She cleaned the worst of the wounds with water that ran brown, then black, then finally clear. Wrapped what she could reach, left the rest. She'd survive. She always did. The food sat on the table, bread, cheese, dried meat, an apple. Actual, real food. Her stomach cramped just looking at it. She sat down, picked up the bread, put it down, picked it up again. She'd gone 3 days without eating before. 5, once, when winter had been particularly cruel. Her body knew how to stretch a meal, how to make nothing last. But staring at this much food all at once made something hot and sharp press behind her eyes. Don't cry. You don't cry. Not anymore. She shoved half the bread in her mouth and chewed mechanically. It tasted like dust. Everything tasted like dust when you were this hungry. Your body forgot how to process flavor, forgot everything except the desperate need to survive. She was halfway through the cheese when the door opened. Lyra was on her feet instantly, a knife in her hand. Except she didn't have a knife. She'd grabbed the butter spreader. The woman in the doorway raised one elegant eyebrow. Planning to butter me to death? Velka Draven. Up close, the king's advisor was even more beautiful and more dangerous. She moved like water, like smoke, like something that could slip through cracks and reform on the other side. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe braid. Her dress was simple, black, expensive. Her smile was all teeth. I came to check on our unexpected guest, Velka said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her, to ensure you were being properly cared for. I'm fine. Clearly. Velka's gaze swept over Lyra, the wounds, the filth, the butter knife still clutched in white-knuckled fingers. Put that down before you hurt yourself. Lyra didn't move. Velka sighed. Child, if I wanted you dead, you would be. I don't need weapons. I have much more efficient methods. Good for you. You don't trust easily. That's wise. Velka moved to the window, her back to Lyra. Casual, unthreatened. Tell me, why did you really come here? I told you, to make an offer. Yes, a very creative offer. Velka turned, and her expression was something that might have been curiosity in a warmer person. But no one climbs the walls of Vexmoor Fortress on a whim. especially not someone with your particular disadvantage. You mean being wolfless. I mean being nothing. Velka's voice was soft, almost kind. You have no pack, no family, no power, no protection. You're a ghost, Lyra Ashen. The world has already forgotten you exist, so why come here? Why risk execution for the chance to stand in front of a king who feels nothing? Lyra met her eyes. Maybe I wanted to see if the stories were true. And? They are. He's exactly as cold as they say. Lyra paused. Except when he touched me. Velka's expression didn't change, not even slightly, but something in the air shifted, a predator catching a scent. You're imagining things, Velka said lightly. Hunger can cause hallucinations. Delirium. You should rest. I saw his face. Something happened. The king has been cursed for 300 years. Nothing happens to him anymore. Velka moved toward the door. But I'm curious. What do you think you felt? Lyra hesitated. That moment in the throne room, when their fingers had touched, she'd felt it too. Not warmth, exactly. More like recognition. Like her bones had suddenly remembered a language they'd forgotten. Like something sleeping inside her had opened one eye. I don't know, she said finally, but I'm going to find out. Velka's smile widened. Ambitious. Foolish. But ambitious. She opened the door, then paused. A word of advice, child. This fortress has swallowed braver souls than you. Kings, queens, warriors, legends, all gone to dust. Whatever you think you can accomplish here, whatever fantasy you're chasing, let it go. Eat your food, wear your pretty dresses, play the role of the king's curiosity, and when he grows bored, leave quietly. And if I don't? Then you'll learn why no one challenges what has stood for 3 centuries. Velka stepped through the doorway. Sleep well, Lyra Ashen. Tomorrow, your real education begins. The door closed. Lyra stood in the center of the room, butter knife still in her hand, heart hammering against her ribs. She'd been threatened before. Chased. Beaten. Told she was worthless, cursed, better off dead. But Velka's warning felt different. It felt like truth. Lyra looked down at the food on the table, at the soft bed, at the clean water. Then she walked to the window and looked out over the fortress grounds. In the distance, she could see the Blackstone throne room, its windows dark except for one. A single candle burned in the highest window. Someone was awake. Someone was watching. Lyra pressed her palm against the cold glass. And somewhere, 3 floors down and half a fortress away, Darian Vexmore pressed his hand against the window of his private chambers and wondered why he could still feel the ghost of warmth against his skin. Darian didn't sleep. He hadn't truly slept in 300 years, not the deep, dreamless surrender that humans described. Instead, he existed in a state of semi-consciousness, his mind cycling through tactical assessments, territorial reports, and the endless gray sameness of a mortal existence. Tonight was different. Tonight, his mind kept returning to storm gray eyes and a half-eaten piece of bread. You're being irrational, he told the empty room. The room didn't answer. Darian paced to the window, then back to his desk, then to the window again. The bread still sat where he'd placed it, on a silver plate, absurd and out of place among maps and military reports. He picked it up. It was stale, crumbling, worthless by any objective measure. He bit into it, flavor, dry, slightly bitter, the ghost of wheat and salt. His tongue remembered how to process texture, how to identify taste, and the sensation was so overwhelming he had to grip the desk for support. Gone. The bread was just bread again. The flavor, if it had ever been there, vanished. Impossible, he whispered, but he'd felt it, just like he'd felt the warmth when their fingers touched. A knock at the door. Enter. Velka glided in, closing the door behind her with a soft click. She'd changed out of her formal advisor's robes into something simpler, a black dress that moved like water. Her silver hair hung loose around her shoulders. You should be resting, she said. I don't rest. No, you pace, you brood, you make decisions that will haunt this kingdom for decades. She moved to the window beside him, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Keeping the girl was a mistake. Noted. Darian. She used his name, which she only did in private. I've served you for 200 years. In all that time, I have never seen you act impulsively. But tonight, she touched me and I felt warmth. Velka went still. What? For less than a second. When our fingers made contact, I felt heat. Darian turned to face her. Explain that. I can't. Try. Velka was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. The curse feeds on isolation, on emptiness. Perhaps this girl, this strange, desperate girl, triggered some kind of psychosomatic response, a memory of sensation rather than sensation itself. It felt real. Hunger feels real when you're starving. That doesn't make the imagined feast any more substantial. Velka placed a hand on his arm. Her touch, as always, registered as neither warm nor cold, just pressure. This is dangerous, Darian. If word spreads that a wolfless vagrant affected you in some way, who would I tell? Darian gestured at the empty room. You? The servants who don't meet my eyes? The nobles who offer me daughters like breeding stock? You could tell her. And say what? Congratulations, your poverty and desperation briefly made me feel less dead? Darian moved away from the window. I'm not cruel, Velka. Whatever this is, it's my problem, not hers. Then send her away. No. Why not? Because... Darian stopped. The answer sat in his throat, sharp and true. Because I want to feel it again. Because 3 centuries of nothing makes you desperate for anything. Because I want to understand what happened. Velka's expression was unreadable. Very well, I'll have her watched. Don't. Someone has to protect you from yourself. Velka. She's hiding something. Velka's voice went sharp, precise. Did you see the way she moved? The way she assessed exits, counted guards, measured distances? That's not desperation. That's training. She's survived 6 years without a wolf. Of course she's trained herself to survive. Yes, but there's a difference between survival instinct and tactical awareness. Velka moved closer. I've seen soldiers with less situational awareness than that girl. She's not what she appears to be. Neither are you. Velka's mouth curved into a cold smile. No, but I've never pretended otherwise. She headed for the door, then paused. Keep her if you must, but don't trust her, and don't... She stopped. Don't what? Don't hope, Velka said quietly. Hope is more dangerous than any curse. She left. Darian stood alone in his chambers, the piece of bread crumbling between his fingers. Outside, the fortress settled into its nightly rhythms, guards changing shifts, servants extinguishing candles, the whole vast machine of empire winding down into darkness. And in the East Tower, a girl with storm-gray eyes pressed her hand against cold glass and wondered what it would take to wake a frozen king. Mo. Lyra woke to someone pounding on her door. She was upright instantly, her body moving before her mind fully caught up. No weapons, no exits except the window, which was a 3-story drop onto stone. She grabbed the butter knife from the table, still there, she'd never put it down, and positioned herself behind the door. Miss Ashen, a woman's voice, sharp and impatient. I know you're awake. Open this door or I'm coming in. Lyra cracked the door open. A woman stood in the hallway, built like a brick wall and wearing an expression that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. She had gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, the kind of face that had forgotten how to smile, and arms that could probably snap Lyra in half. I'm Marta, she said. Head housekeeper. The king wants you presented at breakfast. You have 20 minutes. Presented? Washed, dressed, looking like something other than a drowned rat. Marta's gaze swept over Lyra with clinical disapproval. Come, we have a lot of work to do and very little time. Lyra didn't move. I can wash myself. Can you style hair, select appropriate attire for a formal meal, navigate fortress etiquette without causing an international incident? Marta raised an eyebrow. No? Then stop arguing and follow me. Against her better judgment, Lyra followed. Marta led her down a corridor, through a door Lyra hadn't noticed, and into a bathing chamber that made Lyra stop dead. The room was tiled in white marble. A huge basin, too big to be called a tub, too elegant to be called a pool, sat in the center, already filled with steaming water. Herbs floated on the surface, filling the air with scents Lyra couldn't name. "In," Marta commanded. Girl, I have scrubbed royalty, warriors, and visiting dignitaries for 40 years. You are neither special nor modest enough to waste my time with embarrassment." "In." Lyra stripped and got in. The water was hot enough to hurt. She sank down anyway, letting it close over her head, washing away 6 years of dirt and blood and survival. When she surfaced, Marta was already working something into her hair. Soap, maybe, or, "Ow! Your hair is matted worse than a horse's tail. Hold still." Lyra held still. Marta worked in silence, her hands surprisingly gentle despite their roughness. She washed Lyra's hair 3 times, used something that smelled like flowers on the worst of the tangles, then started on the rest of her. "Turn around. Arms up. Other way. Stop flinching." By the time Marta was done, Lyra felt raw, exposed, like someone had peeled off a protective layer she hadn't known she was wearing. Marta handed her a towel. "Out." Lyra climbed out, dripping, and let Marta wrap her in fabric softer than anything she'd ever touched. "Sit." Lyra sat. Marta worked on her hair with a comb, attacking knots with the precision of a general planning a campaign. Then came oils, more combing, and finally, Marta began to braid. "You don't have to do this," Lyra said quietly. "The king commanded it." Lyra stopped. "Never mind." Marta's hands paused. "You mean, why am I being thorough instead of making you look ridiculous?" "Yes. Because contrary to popular belief, I take pride in my work." Marta resumed braiding. "And because the girl brave enough, or stupid enough, to climb the fortress walls with no wolf and no plan deserves to at least look like she belongs here, even if she doesn't." When Marta finished, she held up a mirror. Lyra stared. The girl in the reflection had clean skin, clear eyes, and dark hair woven into an intricate braid. She looked human, whole, like someone who hadn't spent years sleeping in mud and eating scraps. "Don't cry," Marta said gruffly. "You'll ruin my work." Lyra blinked hard. "I'm not crying." "Good. Now get dressed." The dress Marta produced was simple, dark blue, long-sleeved, practical. Nothing like the silk and jewels the noble daughters had worn. But it fit. It was clean. It had no holes. Lyra put it on. "Better," Marta said. "You still look half-starved, but at least now you look like you're trying not to be." She opened the door. "The breakfast hall is 3 floors down, west wing. Don't get lost. Don't embarrass the king. And for the love of all that's sacred, don't stick your knife in anyone important." "My butter knife?" Marta's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "That too." Lyra got lost anyway. The fortress was a maze, corridors leading to courtyards leading to more corridors, everything looking exactly the same. She'd been wandering for 10 minutes when she heard voices. Absolutely absurd. A wolfless vagrant at the king's table. She must have some kind of leverage, blackmail perhaps. Or she's a spy, sent by the Eastern Territories to... Lyra rounded the corner and found 3 women clustered together, their fine dresses making soft swishing sounds. They fell silent when they saw her. One of them, blonde, beautiful, wearing pearls, smiled. "You must be the famous Lyra Ashen." "I'm not famous." "Oh, but you are. The girl who brought our king a piece of bread. Everyone's talking about it." The blonde woman's smile sharpened. "I'm Serena Grendale. We met yesterday, though I doubt you remember. You were rather occupied." Lyra remembered, the cream silk dress, the white gold crown. "I remember," she said. "How wonderful." Old Serena stepped closer. "Tell me, what did you feel when you touched the king?" The question landed like a knife between ribs. "I don't know what you—" "Everyone saw it, dear. The way he reacted, the way his expression changed." Serena's voice dripped false sympathy. "We're all so curious. Did you use some kind of magic? A charm? Or perhaps, her voice dropped to a stage whisper, perhaps you reminded him of someone disposable. The other two women tittered. Lyra's hands curled into fists. I should go. Yes, you probably should. The breakfast hall is that way. Serena pointed down a corridor. Do try not to embarrass yourself. The king's patience for novelty is notoriously short. Lyra walked past them, spine straight, refusing to run. Behind her, she heard Serena's voice, clear and cutting. Poor thing, she actually thinks she matters. Lyra's jaw clenched. She kept walking. The breakfast hall was smaller than the grand hall, but no less intimidating. A long table dominated the center, already half full of nobles in their morning finery. They fell silent when Lyra entered. Darian sat at the head of the table, his face as expressionless as always. But when his eyes found hers, something flickered across his features. Recognition. Miss Ashen, he said. Please, sit. There was exactly one empty chair, right next to him. Lyra walked the length of the table, feeling every eye on her. The silence was so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. When she reached the chair, she sat and waited for the world to end. It didn't. Instead, servants appeared with food, eggs, bread, fruit, meat, things Lyra didn't even have names for. They set plates in front of each guest, moving with practiced efficiency. When a plate appeared before Lyra, she stared at it. You're supposed to eat it, Darian said quietly. I know. Then why aren't you? Because I'm trying to figure out which fork to use. A sound escaped him, short, sharp, unexpected. Darian was laughing. The entire table froze. The king stopped immediately, his expression closing like a door slamming shut. But for one impossible second, Lyra had heard it. Genuine amusement. Use whichever fork you like, Darian said, his voice carefully neutral again. I won't judge. Lyra picked up the smallest fork, it seemed safest, and ate. The meal passed in relative silence. Nobles murmured to each other, shooting glances at Lyra, at Darian, measuring distances and calculating odds. Lyra focused on not spilling anything, not using the wrong fork, not humiliating herself in front of people who already thought she was worthless. Halfway through, Darian leaned slightly closer. You're doing fine, he said, too quiet for anyone else to hear. I'm terrified. Good. That means you're smart. He paused. They're more afraid of you than you are of them. Liar. Partially. Another pause. But you climbed a fortress wall with no wolf and no weapons. That takes either courage or madness. Either way. His eyes met hers. They're wondering which one you are. What do you think? Darian was quiet for a long moment. I think, he said finally, you're the first interesting thing to happen to me in 300 years. Before Lyra could respond, Velka's voice cut through the room like a bell. My king, a word if you please. Darian's jaw tightened, but he stood, excused himself, and followed Velka to the far end of the hall. Lyra watched them go, watched the way Velka leaned in, speaking too softly to hear, watched the way Darian's expression grew colder, more distant. When he returned, whatever warmth had been there was gone. Miss Ashen, he said formally, I have business to attend to. Velka will see to your accommodations. He left. Velka remained, her smile sharp and knowing. Well, she said, that went better than expected. You didn't spill anything, stab anyone, or burst into tears. Congratulations. Lyra stood. What did you say to him? I reminded him of reality, that novelty fades, that wolves eat mice, no matter how interesting the mouse might be. Velka tilted her head. Come, we have much to discuss about your place here. I don't have a place here. Exactly, but the king seems intent on creating one. So until he changes his mind, and he will, we must establish rules. Velka gestured toward the door. After you. Lyra had no choice but to follow, and behind them, sitting forgotten on Darian's empty plate, was a small piece of bread, already crumbling into dust. Velka's office was located in the North Tower, a place servants whispered about but rarely entered. The room itself was elegant in a cold, precise way. Shelves lined with books bound in leather, maps covering one entire wall, a desk made of black wood that looked older than the fortress itself. Velka sat behind that desk now, her silver hair catching the light from a single window. Lyra stood. There was no second chair. "So," Velka said, steepling her fingers, "let's discuss your future." "I don't have a future here." "Clever girl. You're correct, of course. But the king seems temporarily convinced otherwise, which means we need to establish boundaries." Velka pulled out a piece of parchment, dipped a quill in ink. "First, you will not enter the king's private chambers. Second, you will not speak to him unless spoken to first. Third, you will not discuss what happened during the selection with anyone. Do you understand?" "No." Velka's hand paused mid-stroke. "Excuse me? I don't understand why you're so afraid of me." Lyra stepped closer to the desk. "I'm nobody. I have nothing. You said so yourself, so why all these rules? I'm protecting the king." "From what? A girl who can't even shift?" Lyra planted her palms on the desk, leaning in. "Or are you protecting something else?" Velka's expression didn't change, but her eyes went very, very cold. "Careful, child. You're in a fortress surrounded by wolves who would kill you for sport. The only reason you're breathing is because the king finds you temporarily amusing. Push too hard, and that protection vanishes." "Then kill me." Lyra kept her voice level. "Go ahead. Slit my throat. Throw me off the tower. Whatever you people do to problems. But stop pretending this is about rules or boundaries or protecting anyone. You want me gone because I make you nervous. You don't make me nervous. Liar." Lyra straightened. "When I touched the king, something happened. You saw it. Everyone saw it. And whatever it was, it scares you." For a long moment, Velka said nothing. Then she set down the quill with deliberate care. "You want the truth?" she asked softly. "Very well. Yes, something happened. A flicker of reaction in a man who hasn't reacted to anything in 3 centuries. Do you know what that means? That maybe your precious curse isn't as unbreakable as you thought." "No." Velka stood, moving around the desk like a predator circling prey. "It means you're dangerous. Not because of what you are, but because of what people might believe you are. Hope is a poison, Lyra Ashen. Give these people even a whisper of it, that their frozen king might thaw, that the curse might break, and this entire kingdom will tear itself apart, fighting over you. That's not, isn't it?" Velka stopped inches away. "You've been here one day and already the nobles are whispering. Serena Grendale cornered you in the hallway, didn't she? Asked what you felt, what you are. Within a week, every ambitious house in the territory will be trying to either claim you, kill you, or use you. And in the chaos, people will die. Good people. Innocent people." Lyra swallowed. "So what do you want me to do?" "Leave, tonight. I'll give you gold, supplies, safe passage to any territory you choose. Just go." "And if I don't?" Velka's smile was sad, almost pitying. "Then you'll learn why hope is more dangerous than any curse." She walked to the door, opened it. "Think about it. You have until morning." Lyra stood alone in the office, her reflection staring back from the darkened window. She should leave. She knew that. Everything Velka said made sense. She was one girl against an entire kingdom, wolfless and powerless, clinging to a moment of warmth that might have been nothing more than imagination. But she'd felt it, and she'd seen Darian's face, that flicker of something behind 300 years of ice. Lyra turned and walked out of the office, her mind already working. If the curse was real, there had to be a source, a mechanism, something sustaining it across centuries. And if Velka was this desperate to make her leave, maybe Lyra was closer to finding it than anyone realized. The fortress library was tucked away in the east wing, down a corridor that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Lyra found it by accident, following the smell of old paper and dust. The room was vast. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, packed with books, scrolls, loose parchments crumbling at the edges. Moonlight filtered through high windows, casting everything in silver and shadow. Lyra walked along the shelves, trailing her fingers over spines. Most of the titles were in languages she didn't recognize, but here and there she caught familiar words. History, treaties, bloodlines, curses. She pulled the book from the shelf. It was heavy, bound in cracked leather, the pages yellowed and brittle. The title read, Afflictions of the Immortal, a Comprehensive Study. Lyra carried it to a table, sat down, and started reading. Most of it was nonsense, theories about moon phases and blood sacrifices, warnings about ancient gods and forgotten rituals. But 3 hours in, she found something that made her stop cold. Curses of this magnitude require constant reinforcement. Unlike simple hexes or glamours, a curse designed to suppress emotion, sensation, and natural death must be actively maintained. The caster, or their designated anchor, must regularly renew the binding, often through ritual or proximity to the afflicted. Lyra read it again, then again, actively maintained, which meant someone was still feeding this curse. Someone close enough to Darien to sustain it across 3 centuries. Find something interesting? Lyra spun around. Captain Torvin stood in the doorway, his grizzled face unreadable in the shadows. He wasn't wearing his armor, just a simple shirt and trousers, but he still moved like a soldier. Just reading, Lyra said carefully. At 3 in the morning, in a library no one's used in 50 years. Torvin stepped inside, his boots silent on the stone floor. You're either very dedicated to scholarship or very bad at being subtle. Maybe both. Torvin's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I like you. You've got spine. Stupid, but spine. He moved to the shelf, pulled down a different book. This one's better. Less theory, more practical application. He set it in front of her. The Architecture of Ancient Bindings. Why are you helping me? Lyra asked. Because I've served King Darien for 90 years. Before the curse turned him into a walking corpse, he was... Torvin stopped, looked away. He was different. Better. And if there's even a chance you can bring that back... He met her eyes. I'm willing to risk treason. This is treason? Lady Velka gave explicit orders. You're to be monitored, not educated. Torvin tapped the book. Read fast. I'll watch the door. Lyra opened the book. This one was written by someone who understood curses from the inside out. It detailed binding structures, anchor points, the way magical energy flowed through time and space. And near the end, she found a passage that made her blood run cold. To identify an active curse, one must locate the anchor, the person or object through which power flows. Anchors often display certain characteristics: resistance to aging, heightened magical sensitivity, and an unnatural longevity that mirrors the cursed individual. In rare cases, the anchor may not know they serve this purpose, their life force slowly drained across centuries without conscious awareness. Lyra looked up. Torvin, who's the oldest person in this fortress? Besides the king. Lady Velka. She's been his advisor for 200 years. Before that, her mother held the position, and before that, her grandmother. Torvin frowned. Why? Lyra's mind raced. The curse needs an anchor, someone close to Darien, someone who's been here since the beginning. You think Velka is the anchor? I think someone is, and she's the only person who's been here long enough to... Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Torvin moved instantly, shoving both books back onto shelves, grabbing Lyra's arm. Move! Now! He pulled her toward a side door half hidden behind a tapestry. They slipped through just as voices filled the library behind them. Told you she'd be snooping around. Find her. The lady wants her confined to her room until... The door closed, cutting off the rest. Torvin led Lyra through a narrow servant's passage, up a spiral staircase, and finally into a small storage room filled with linens. Stay here, he said. Don't move. Don't make a sound. I'll come back when it's safe. Torvin, whatever you're planning, be smart about it. Velka has eyes everywhere. She'll know you were in that library before sunrise. He paused at the door. And Lyra, if you're right about the anchor, if Velka really is sustaining the curse, confronting her directly would be suicide. Then what do I do? Find proof. Something undeniable. And for the love of all that's sacred, don't tell the king until you're absolutely certain. He's trusted Velka for 2 centuries. If you're wrong, he'll throw you out himself. Torvin disappeared into the passage. Lyra sat among the folded sheets, her mind churning. If Velka was the anchor, that explained everything. Her desperation to make Lyra leave, her control over Darien, the way she'd been positioned at the throne for generations, always close, always watching. But proof. She needed proof. And the only place she'd find it was in Velka's office. Boss. Dawn broke cold and gray over the fortress. Lyra waited until the servants began their morning routines, carrying water, lighting fires, preparing breakfast, then slipped out of the storage room and made her way toward the North Tower. She'd watched the guard rotations yesterday, memorized patrol patterns. There was a 6-minute gap between shifts at the base of the tower when one guard left and the next arrived. 6 minutes to get in, find something, anything, and get out. Lyra counted down in her head as she approached the tower entrance. 5 minutes. The current guard yawned, shifted his weight. 4 minutes. He checked his timepiece. 3 minutes. Voices down the corridor. His replacement, right on schedule. 2 minutes. The guards exchanged words, laughed about something. 1 minute. The first guard walked away. The second guard turned to adjust his helmet. Now! Lyra moved. She was through the door and up the spiral staircase before the new guard had finished settling into position. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her breathing stayed controlled, silent. She'd learned that much over 6 years of survival. Make a sound and you die. Velka's office door was locked. Of course it was. Lyra pulled a thin piece of wire from her hair, one of many she'd tucked into the elaborate braid Marta had woven. In another life, she might have laughed at the irony. Instead, she worked the lock with steady hands, listening for the click. There. The door opened. Lyra slipped inside and closed it behind her. The office looked exactly the same. Neat, organized. Every book in place, every paper perfectly aligned. Too perfect, maybe. Like a room that was frequently searched and never truly used for actual work. Lyra started with the desk. Opened drawers carefully, checking for traps or alarms, found correspondence, financial records, nothing unusual. She moved to the shelves, running her hands along book spines, looking for... Her fingers caught on something. A book that didn't sit flush with the others. She pulled it out. The cover read, Lineage Records of House Draven. Lyra opened it. The pages inside weren't about lineage, they were about ritual magic. Detailed diagrams showing binding circles, anchor points, the flow of power from one person to another. And in the margins, written in Velka's precise handwriting, Year 147. Reinforcement successful. Subject shows no awareness. Year 203. Minor fluctuation during solstice. Corrected with additional binding. Year 289. Subject growing stronger. Increased draw necessary to maintain stasis. Lyra's hands shook as she turned pages. There were dozens of entries. Hundreds. A meticulous record spanning 2 centuries, documenting every time Velka had renewed the curse, adjusted the binding, pulled more life force from Darien to keep him frozen. And at the very end, dated 3 days ago, external interference detected, unknown variable introduced during selection ceremony. Subject exhibited brief sensory response. This cannot be allowed to continue. The variable must be eliminated. The variable. Velka meant her. Lyra heard footsteps in the corridor outside. She shoved the book back onto the shelf, ducked behind the desk just as the door opened. Absolutely certain she was here? Velka's voice. The library guard saw someone matching her description, my lady, and the locks on your office show signs of tampering. Lyra pressed herself against the desk's back panel, barely breathing. Search the room, thoroughly. Footsteps moved around the office. Drawers opened, books shifted. Lyra could see boots through the gap beneath the desk, 2 sets moving closer. A bell rang somewhere in the fortress, loud, urgent. The footsteps stopped. What now? Velka snapped. Emergency assembly, my lady. The king is calling all senior staff to the throne room. Immediately. Velka cursed under her breath. Fine. Lock this office. No one enters until I return. Understood? Yes, my lady. The footsteps retreated. The door closed. A key turned in the lock. Lyra waited, counting to 100, then 2, before finally crawling out from behind the desk. She was locked in, and Velka would be back. Lyra looked around the office, mind racing. The window was too high, too narrow. The door was solid oak, impossible to break quietly, which left the fireplace. It was small, ornamental, clearly not used for actual fires, but behind the decorative grate, Lyra could see darkness. A chimney, maybe. Or she pulled the grate away and looked up. Not a chimney, a shaft. Some kind of ventilation system, just barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Lyra took a breath, grabbed the ledge, and pulled herself up. The shaft was tight, suffocating. Stone scraped her shoulders, her hips, every movement an exercise in controlled panic. But she climbed, inch by inch, until she saw light above. She emerged onto the fortress roof, gasping, covered in soot. Below, the entire courtyard was filled with people. Guards, nobles, servants, all assembled in neat rows facing the throne room balcony where Darian stood, Velka beside him. Lyra couldn't hear what he was saying from this distance, but she saw the crowd's reaction, shock, confusion, a ripple of fear moving through hundreds of people at once. Then she saw why. In the center of the courtyard, surrounded by guards, stood 3 bodies. No, not bodies. 3 noble daughters, the ones who'd competed in the selection. They were alive, but barely, collapsed on the ground, their skin gray, their breathing shallow, and every single one of them had touched Darian during the ceremony. Lyra's blood ran cold. She watched as Darian gestured, his face expressionless, watched as guards carried the women away, watched as Velka leaned close, whispered something in his ear, watched as Darian's eyes lifted, scanning the fortress walls, looking for her. Lyra ducked back from the edge. Her mind raced through possibilities, discarding them as fast as they formed. Those women had touched Darian, just like she had, and now they were dying, which meant either the curse was spreading or someone was making sure no one else could replicate what Lyra had done. The variable must be eliminated. Velka wasn't just sustaining the curse, she was protecting it, and anyone who threatened that protection ended up dead. Lyra needed to get to Darian, needed to show him the journal, make him understand what Velka had been doing for 200 years. But first, she needed to survive long enough to... A hand clamped over her mouth. Lyra tried to scream, to fight, but the grip was iron strong. She was dragged backward, away from the roof edge, into the shadows behind a ventilation tower. Stop struggling. It's me. Torvin. Lyra went limp with relief. He released her, and she spun around. What are you doing here? Saving your life? Again. Torvin looked furious. I told you to stay hidden. Instead, you broke into Velka's office? I found proof. She's the anchor. She's been feeding the curse for... I know. Torvin cut her off. I've known for 50 years. Lyra stared. What? You think you're the first person to figure it out? I've watched 6 people discover the truth, and I've watched Velka arrange 6 convenient accidents. Torvin grabbed her shoulders. Those women down there? They didn't get sick by coincidence. Velka poisoned them, made it look like a delayed reaction to touching the king, so no one else would dare try. Then why didn't you tell Darian? Because I can't prove it. Velka has covered her tracks for 2 centuries. Every piece of evidence, every witness, gone. You think I didn't try? His voice cracked. I served him before the curse, fought beside him, watched him turn into a corpse while that woman fed off his life force, and I couldn't do anything except watch. The journal, Lyra said, in her office. It has everything, dates, rituals, her admitting to maintaining the curse. It's gone by now. Velka's too smart to leave evidence lying around. If she thought you saw it, she's already destroyed it. Then what do we do? Torvin was quiet for a long moment. There's one way to prove it, but it's suicide. Tell me. The curse is linked to Velka's life force. If she dies, the binding breaks, immediately. Torvin met Lyra's eyes. But she's a powerful witch, protected by the entire fortress. Getting close enough to kill her is impossible. And even if you did, Darian would have you executed for murdering his most trusted advisor. So we're just supposed to let her. I'm saying be smart. There's a council meeting tonight. All the senior nobles will be there, including Velka. That's when she's most vulnerable, distracted, surrounded by witnesses. If you can expose her in front of everyone, force Darian to see the truth? How? I don't know. You're the one who climbed a fortress wall with no plan. Figure it out. Torvin started toward the roof access. But do it fast. Because those women dying, that was a warning. Next time, Velka won't bother with poison. She'll just have you thrown off a tower and call it an accident. He disappeared through the door. Lyra stood alone on the roof, looking out over the fortress. Below, servants were carrying the unconscious women into the medical wing. Guards patrolled in increased numbers. And somewhere in the North Tower, Velka was probably destroying evidence, covering tracks, preparing to eliminate the one person who'd gotten too close to the truth. Lyra had no weapons, no allies except one aging soldier, no proof that wouldn't be destroyed before she could show it. But she'd survived 6 years against worse odds, and she'd be damned if she'd let a 200-year-old curse win now. The council meeting was held in the war room, a circular chamber with a map table at its center and banners hanging from the walls. Lyra watched from the servants' entrance, hidden behind a tapestry as nobles filed in. Torvin had gotten her this far, smuggled her through back passages, past guard checkpoints, into this position where she could see and hear everything. Now came the hard part, proving that Velka was a monster without proof. Darian entered last, Velka at his side. He took his seat at the head of the table, his face as expressionless as always. The curse had locked back down after that brief moment of warmth in the breakfast hall. He was frozen again, distant. "Report," he said. A nobleman in military dress stood. "The eastern border remains unstable, my king. 3 skirmishes in the past month. They're testing our defenses. Increase patrols next." Another noble. "Food stores are adequate for winter, but the southern farms report crop failures. We may need to negotiate trade agreements." Denied. We're self-sufficient. Next. It went on like that for an hour. Military reports, economic assessments, territorial disputes. Darian listened to each with the same flat attention, making decisions with mechanical efficiency. No emotion, no hesitation, just the frozen king doing what frozen kings do. Then Velka spoke. "One final matter, my king. The selection candidates who fell ill this morning, 3 of them have died. The other 2 are unlikely to survive the night." Silence fell over the room. "Cause?" Darian asked. "Unknown, but all 5 exhibited the same symptoms, rapid cellular decay, as if their life force was being drained. The healers have never seen anything like it." Velka paused. "However, there is one commonality. All 5 candidates made physical contact with you during the selection ceremony." Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles. "What are you suggesting?" Darian's voice went cold. "I'm suggesting that the curse may be evolving, becoming more aggressive. Anyone who touches you now risks contamination." Velka's gaze swept the room. "For everyone's safety, I recommend immediate isolation protocols. No physical contact with the king, no exceptions." Lyra's hands curled into fists. Velka was locking down the one thing that might break the curse, contact with someone who could make Darian feel. "There is one other variable," Velka continued. "The vagrant girl, Lyra Ashen, also touched the king, yet she shows no symptoms. This could mean she's immune, or that she's the source of the contamination." Every head turned. Darian's expression didn't change, but his hands gripped the arms of his chair just slightly tighter. "Where is she?" he asked. "Confined to her room, for her own protection. But I recommend immediate examination. If she's carrying some kind of curse or disease, no." Velka blinked. "My king? Miss Ashen poses no threat. This discussion is over." Darian stood. Council dismissed. But dismissed. The nobles filed out, whispering among themselves. Velka remained, her face a careful mask. "Darian," she said quietly, "this girl is dangerous. You felt something when she touched you, didn't you? A moment of warmth, of feeling. That's none of your concern." "It's absolutely my concern. For 3 centuries I've kept you alive, stable. The curse is a prison, yes, but it's also the only thing standing between you and death. If this girl somehow disrupts the binding, if she makes you feel again, the backlash could destroy you. Or free me." Velka went very still. "What?" "You heard me." Darian turned to face her. Every day for 300 years, I've existed in gray nothing. No warmth, no cold, no pleasure, no pain, just empty. And then a starving girl touches my hand, and for 1 second, I remembered what it felt like to be alive. His voice dropped. So maybe I want that backlash. Maybe I want to feel something, even if it kills me. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in centuries. Darian's voice cracked like thunder. You've been my advisor, my confidant, my anchor through all of this. But answer me honestly, Velka. If there was a way to break this curse, would you tell me? Or would you keep me frozen forever because it's easier to control a dead king than a living one? The question hung in the air like a blade. Velka's expression smoothed, closed. You're distraught. We'll discuss this when you're calmer. She walked toward the door. Behind the tapestry, Lyra made her decision. She stepped out. He asked you a question, she said. Velka spun around. How did you answer him? If there was a way to break the curse, would you tell him? Velka's eyes went cold. Guards! No guards, Darian said quietly. He was staring at Lyra, his expression unreadable. Miss Ashen, you were supposed to be in your room. I was. Then I broke out, broke into Velka's office, found her journal documenting 200 years of curse maintenance. Lyra took a step closer. She's the anchor, the one keeping you frozen. And those women who died? She poisoned them because they threatened her control. That's absurd, Velka said. The girl is clearly unstable. Prove me wrong. Lyra turned to Darian. Ask her how she's lived 200 years without aging. Ask her why every person who's ever questioned the curse ends up dead. Ask her why she's so desperate for me to leave. Darian looked at Velka. Well, my longevity is a family trait. The deaths were coincidence. And I want this vagrant gone because she's disrupting centuries of carefully maintained order. Velka's voice sharpened. But if you want proof of who's really dangerous, let me examine her. Let's see what kind of creature can walk away unharmed after touching a cursed king. No one's examining anyone, Tersin, Darian said. Then you're condemning yourself. And everyone in this fortress. Velka moved closer to him. The curse is all that's holding back your accumulated lifespan. You should have died 300 years ago. If it breaks now, those centuries will come due all at once. You'll age to dust in seconds. Is that true? Lyra asked. I don't know, Darian said. I've never tested it. Because I never let you. Velka's voice went soft, almost tender. I've protected you, kept you stable, given you immortality, even if it's a cold one. And yes, I've eliminated threats, because this kingdom needs a strong ruler, not a dead one. By killing innocent women? By doing what's necessary. Velka's mask cracked, just for a second. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I'm the anchor. Yes, I've maintained the curse. Because without it, there is no kingdom, there is no order, just chaos and death and… She stopped, realized what she'd just admitted. Darian's face went blank. Get out. Darian, get out. Velka looked at him, at Lyra, back to him. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. Then she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing through the empty war room. When the door closed, Darian sank back into his chair. 300 years, he said. His voice sounded hollow. She's been feeding off me for 300 years. Lyra approached slowly. I'm sorry. Don't be. You gave me the truth. That's more than anyone else has done. He looked up at her. Those women who died, did Velka really poison them? I think so, to make sure no one else could break the curse. And you? Why aren't you dead? I don't know. Lyra hesitated. Maybe because I'm wolfless. Maybe because I have nothing for the curse to drain. Or maybe… She stopped. Maybe what? Maybe because I'm not trying to take something from you. Everyone else wanted your throne, your power, your kingdom. I just wanted to give you bread. Darian stared at her. Then, slowly, he held out his hand. Touch me, he said. What? You heard me. If the curse is going to kill me anyway, if Velka's right and breaking it means death, I want to feel something real before I go. Just once. His hand stayed extended. Please. Lyra looked at his hand, at his face, at 3 centuries of loneliness carved into every line. She reached out and took his hand. Warmth flooded through her, not just heat, but life, fierce and overwhelming. Color exploded across the room. She could feel Darian's pulse against her palm, fast and strong and real, could see his eyes widen as sensation crashed over him. And somewhere in the North Tower, Velka screamed. The scream cut through stone and steel, a sound of pure rage that sent every guard in the fortress running toward the North Tower. But Lyra barely heard it. She was drowning in sensation. Darian's pulse hammering against her palm, the rough warmth of his skin, the way his fingers tightened around hers like he was afraid she'd disappear. Heat poured between them, building, intensifying, until the air itself seemed to shimmer. Darian gasped. His other hand came up, gripping her wrist, and Lyra saw color flood back into his face. Not just color, life. His eyes, previously flat gray, blazed with silver light. His chest heaved as if he'd forgotten how to breathe and was remembering all at once. I can feel... His voice cracked. Everything. Your heartbeat, the air, the stone under my feet. It's... The doors exploded inward. Velka stood in the entrance, her silver hair wild, her face twisted with fury. Dark energy crackled around her hands, actual visible magic, black and writhing like living smoke. Let him go. Lyra tried to pull away, but Darian held on. No, he said. His voice was different now, alive. I felt nothing for 3 centuries, Velka, and now I feel everything. I'm not giving that up. You fool, you're killing yourself. Velka raised one hand and the black energy coalesced into something solid, a blade made of shadow. The curse is collapsing, in minutes, maybe seconds. 300 years of accumulated age will hit you all at once. You'll crumble to dust. Then let me crumble as a man instead of a corpse. I won't let you. Velka moved. She was fast, faster than anything human should be, crossing the room in a blur of motion. The shadow blade came down toward Lyra's throat. Darian yanked Lyra behind him. The blade stopped an inch from his chest. You protect her over yourself? Velka's voice shook. After everything I've done? Everything I've sacrificed to keep you alive? You mean everything you've taken? Darian's hand was still wrapped around Lyra's. How much of my life did you drain, Velka? How much of my strength, my power, myself did you feed on while pretending to protect me? All of it. Every drop. Velka's smile was broken. Terrible. And I'd do it again. Because you were mine. My project. My creation. The frozen king who ruled without weakness, without emotion, without the pathetic human frailties that destroy lesser men. I made you perfect. You made me dead. I made you immortal. The shadow blade dissolved. But the magic around Velka's hands grew stronger, darker, spreading up her arms like infection. I loved you, she whispered. 300 years ago, before the curse, before everything, I loved you, and you chose her. That weak, pathetic queen who died in childbirth and took your humanity with her. So yes, I cursed you. I took away your ability to feel so you'd never love anyone else. And I've kept you frozen because if I can't have your heart, no one can. Lyra's blood ran cold. Darian's grip on her hand tightened. Alara died 300 years ago. You're telling me that I killed her? No, she managed that herself, the fragile thing. But I made sure you'd never recover, made sure you'd never feel anything for anyone ever again. Velka's laugh was hollow. And it worked. For 3 centuries you were mine, dependent, controlled, perfect. You're insane. I'm committed. Velka's eyes shifted to Lyra. But then, this little rat climbed your walls and ruined everything. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to let her go. I'm going to kill her quickly, more mercy than she deserves. And we're going to rebuild the curse. Stronger this time. No more variables. No more risks. No. Darian, I said no. He stepped forward, putting himself completely between Velka and Lyra. You want to kill her? You go through me first. For a long moment, Velka just stared. Then she smiled. "All right," she said softly. The magic exploded outward. Lyra was thrown backward, slamming into the wall hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. When her vision cleared, she saw Darian on his knees, black tendrils of energy wrapped around his chest, his throat, his arms. Velka stood over him, one hand extended, her face serene. "I didn't want it to come to this," she said. "But you've left me no choice. The curse is already fragmenting. I can feel it breaking apart, piece by piece. So I'll take what's left of your life force, absorb it completely, and use it to build something better. A new curse. A better vessel." "Velka, stop. I'll find a younger king, someone more pliable, someone who won't throw away immortality for a vagrant girl with pretty eyes." The tendrils tightened. Darian's face went gray. "Goodbye, my king. Thank you for 3 wonderful centuries." Lyra's hand found the butter knife still tucked in her sleeve. It was ridiculous. A dull piece of silverware against centuries-old magic, and a witch powerful enough to curse a king. But it was all she had. She lunged. The knife drove into Velka's shoulder. It wasn't a killing blow. Lyra had never killed anything in her life. But it was enough to break Velka's concentration. The black tendrils loosened. Darian gasped, dragging air into his lungs. Velka spun, ripping the knife free, and backhanded Lyra across the face. Pain exploded through Lyra's skull. She hit the ground, tasted blood, tried to get up. Velka's boot slammed into her ribs. "Pest, insect, nothing." Another kick. "You think you can fight me? I've lived 200 years on stolen power. I've ended kingdoms, toppled dynasties, erased entire bloodlines. What are you?" Lyra coughed blood. "Stubborn." She grabbed Velka's ankle and pulled. Velka went down hard, her head cracking against stone. For 1 second, she looked stunned. Lyra scrambled toward Darian. "Can you stand?" He tried. Failed. The magic had drained too much. "Run! Get out of here!" "Not without you!" "Lyra, I didn't climb a fortress wall just to watch you die. Get up." She hauled him to his feet, his weight nearly dragging them both down. Behind them, Velka was rising, blood streaming from her scalp, her face a mask of pure hatred. "You want to save him?" Velka's voice was distorted now, layered with something inhuman. "Then let's see what you really are." She raised both hands. The entire room went dark. Not just absence of light, actual darkness, thick and suffocating. Lyra couldn't see her own hands, couldn't see Darian beside her, could only hear Velka's voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "I've suspected since the beginning. A wolfless girl who survived 6 years alone? Impossible. A vagrant who climbs fortress walls and picks locks and fights like she's been trained? Unlikely. Someone who can touch a cursed king and not die?" A pause. "You're not human, Lyra Ashen, so what are you?" Lyra opened her mouth to answer and felt something inside her wake up. It started in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with Darian's touch. It spread through her veins like liquid fire, burning away exhaustion, pain, fear. Her vision sharpened, cutting through the magical darkness like it wasn't there. And she saw Velka clearly, saw the black magic coiled around her like armor, saw the threads of stolen life force feeding into her from Darian, saw the weakness in the binding, a single point where all the threads converged right over Velka's heart. "There you are," Velka whispered. "I knew you were hiding something." The darkness contracted, crushing inward, trying to smother whatever was waking inside Lyra. But it was too late. Light exploded from Lyra's hands. Not fire, not magic in the traditional sense, just pure radiant energy, blazing white and gold, tearing through Velka's darkness like paper. It filled the room, the hallway, spreading out in waves that made the stone walls shudder. Velka screamed. The black tendrils around Darian disintegrated, the shadow armor cracked, and for the first time in 200 years, Velka looked afraid. "What are you?" she demanded. Lyra didn't know, but her body seemed to know exactly what to do. She raised her hand, and the light condensed into a single point, bright, focused, deadly. It hung in the air between them, humming with barely contained power. "I'm the variable," Lyra said. "The thing you couldn't predict or control or eliminate." She released the light. It shot forward like an arrow, straight toward that weak point in Velka's binding. Velka threw up a shield. Black energy meeting white in a collision that shook the entire tower. Cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. The floor buckled. Somewhere below, people were screaming. "You'll bring down the whole fortress," Velka shouted. "Good!" Lyra poured more energy into the attack, feeling it drain from somewhere deep inside her, some reservoir she hadn't known existed. The light grew brighter, hotter, overwhelming. Velka's shield began to crack. "Stop! You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand perfectly. I'm breaking your curse. You're killing him." Velka's voice went desperate. "The binding is the only thing keeping Darian's accumulated lifespan from crushing him. If you shatter it, if you destroy me, he dies." Lyra hesitated. The light flickered. "She's lying," Darian said. He'd managed to pull himself upright, leaning against the wall, his face pale but his eyes clear. "The binding is killing me. Has been for 3 centuries. Breaking it might kill me faster, but at least I'll die free." "Or," Velka said quickly, "we negotiate. I release the curse. You let me live. Everyone walks away." "You murdered 5 women yesterday. Poisoned them. There's a difference, and I can provide the antidote. Save the 2 who are still alive. All I ask in return is safe passage out of the kingdom." Lyra looked at Darian. "Your call." He met her eyes. And despite everything, the pain, the betrayal, 300 years of frozen existence, he smiled. "Burn her," he said. Lyra turned back to Velka and released everything. The light erupted like a star-going nova, too bright to look at directly. It smashed through Velka's shield, through her defenses, through the black magic she'd woven across centuries. Lyra felt the binding shatter, heard it break like ice cracking under too much weight. Velka's scream cut off abruptly. The darkness vanished. The light faded. And when Lyra's vision cleared, Velka was on her knees, clutching her chest. Blood seeped between her fingers, real blood, not magic. The ageless beauty was melting away, revealing what lay beneath. A woman who should have died 200 years ago, held together by stolen life and dark magic. "You don't know what you've done," Velka whispered. Her voice sounded old now, tired. The curse was holding back more than his age. It was containing his power. The reason he was cursed in the first place? She collapsed, dead before she hit the ground. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Darian screamed, not in pain, in agony. His back arched, his hands clawing at his chest as if trying to rip something out. Power poured off him in visible waves, silver and blue and crackling with energy that made Lyra's teeth ache. "Darian!" She ran to him, grabbed his shoulders, tried to... He threw her back without touching her. The power around him was growing, building, spiraling out of control. The walls cracked, the floor split, and Darian's eyes, no longer gray, no longer human, blazed with pure silver light. "Can't control..." His voice was distorted, layered with something ancient and terrible. "Too much. Too long." Lyra understood. 300 years of suppressed power released all at once, not dying from accumulated age, exploding from accumulated strength. "You have to contain it." "Can't." The word came out as a roar. The ceiling began to collapse. Lyra looked at her hands, still glowing faintly with that strange light that had destroyed Velka's magic. She didn't know what it was, where it came from, or how to control it. But Darian was dying, and she was the only one who could touch him without being destroyed. Lyra ran forward, threw her arms around him, and held on. Power slammed into her like a tidal wave. It should have killed her, should have torn her apart at the cellular level. Instead, it recognized her, flowed into her like water finding a channel, filling that strange reservoir inside her chest until she thought she'd burst. "Let go!" Darian tried to push her away. "You'll die!" "Then we die together." She held tighter, and somewhere in that storm of silver energy and white light, something clicked. The power stopped fighting. Instead, it began to flow. From Darian into Lyra, from Lyra back into Darian, cycling between them in a perfect loop. The excess bled away harmlessly, absorbed by whatever Lyra was, leaving behind only what Darian's body could actually contain. The silver light dimmed, the walls stopped shaking, and Darian collapsed into Lyra's arms, breathing hard but breathing. "What?" He looked up at her, his eyes back to normal, gray but warm, human. What did you do? I have no idea. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Guards burst in, weapons drawn, then froze at the scene before them. Velka's corpse on the floor, the room half destroyed, and their king being held upright by a wolfless, vagrant girl glowing with faint golden light. Captain Torvin pushed through the crowd, took one look, and started barking orders. "Secure the perimeter! Someone get a healer! And you?" He pointed at a young guard who looked ready to faint. "Find out if the tower is going to collapse. Move!" The guards scattered. Torvin approached Lyra and Darian cautiously. "My king, are you alive?" Darian managed to stand, though he kept one hand on Lyra's shoulder for support, which is more than I expected to be. And Lady Velka? Dead, by my order. Darian's voice strengthened. She was the anchor sustaining the curse. The curse is broken. Murmurs rippled through the remaining guards. Torvin knelt. Then the kingdom is yours again. Truly yours. The kingdom is in chaos. Darian looked at the destruction around them. Velka controlled half the infrastructure. Trade agreements, military alliances, territorial treaties, all filtered through her. With her gone, the vultures will come, Torvin finished grimly. Every ambitious house, every rival territory, everyone who's been waiting for a sign of weakness. Let them come. Darian's eyes hardened. I've been dead for 300 years, now I'm awake, and I'm furious. He turned to Lyra. You saved my life, twice, maybe 3 times. I lost count. Name your reward. Lyra opened her mouth, and the North Tower exploded. Not the room they were in, the top of the tower, 2 floors above. Stone and fire erupted into the night sky as something massive tore through the fortress like it was made of paper. Alarms shrieked, more guards came running, and through the smoke and chaos, Lyra saw it, a dragon, massive, black-scaled, with eyes like molten gold. It perched on what remained of the tower's peak, wings spread wide, and roared loud enough to shatter windows across the entire fortress. That's not possible, Torvin whispered. Dragons have been extinct for 300 years, Darian finished. His face had gone pale. Since the curse. Since Velka. The dragon's eyes fixed on them, specifically on Lyra. It roared again, and this time Lyra heard words beneath the sound. Ancient, furious. Thief, destroyer, you who stole what was mine, come face judgment. What is it talking about? Lyra demanded. Darian grabbed her arm. The power you absorbed. When you broke the curse and channeled my excess energy, Velka wasn't just feeding on me, she was feeding on them. The dragons. The last surviving dragons in existence, imprisoned beneath this fortress, their life force drained to fuel her immortality. You're saying I freed them? I'm saying you woke them up furious, and they think you're responsible for 3 centuries of torture. The dragon launched itself off the tower, wings beating the air hard enough to knock guards off their feet. It dove toward them, claws extended, mouth opening to reveal rows of teeth like swords. Run! Torvin shoved Lyra and Darian toward the exit. They ran. Behind them, the dragon crashed into the war room, reducing it to rubble in seconds. Its roar shook the foundations. More explosions echoed from other parts of the fortress, other towers, other imprisoned dragons, all waking, all angry. Lyra and Darian burst into the main courtyard just as the second dragon emerged from the western wall, then a third from the south. They circled overhead, massive shadows against the moonlight, and their combined roars made it clear. This wasn't a prison break. This was a reckoning. And Lyra, the girl who'd broken the curse, who'd shattered the binding, who'd released 3 centuries of pent-up rage, was standing directly in the center of it. What do we do? She shouted over the chaos. Darian looked at her, his eyes reflecting firelight from a dozen burning buildings. You wanted to know what you are? He shouted back. Why you can channel power, survive curses, glow like a star. Not really the time. You're a dragon speaker, the last one, the only living being who can communicate with them, command them, stop them from burning this entire kingdom to ash. He grabbed her shoulders. So here's my question. Can you? Lyra looked up at the circling dragons, at their golden eyes filled with centuries of pain and fury, at the power still humming in her chest, recognizing something in them, calling to them. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Then we're about to find out." The largest dragon, the black one, landed directly in front of them, close enough that Lyra could feel the heat radiating from its scales. It lowered its massive head until its eye was level with hers, and spoke. "You carry our brother's light. You freed us from the witch's chains, but you also stole his power, absorbed his essence, took what was not yours to take." The dragon's voice was like an avalanche given sound. "By the ancient laws, you owe a debt, 1 dragon's worth of life. Pay it, or burn with the humans who imprisoned us." Lyra's mind raced. "I didn't know. I was just trying to save him." "Ignorance is not innocence. Choose your life or his kingdom." "Lyra, don't—" Darian started, but Lyra was already stepping forward, because she'd spent 6 years as prey. 6 years running, hiding, surviving by making herself small and invisible and forgettable. And she was done. "No," she said. The dragon's eye narrowed. "No? You want someone to blame? Fine. Blame Velka. She's the one who imprisoned you, tortured you, fed on you for 300 years. She's dead now, so your revenge is already complete." Lyra's voice grew stronger. "But this kingdom, these people, they didn't know. They were victims too. Ruled by a frozen king and a witch who controlled everything. They don't deserve to burn because you're angry. They stood by. They benefited. They are guilty by proximity." "Then so am I." Lyra spread her arms. "I absorbed your brother's power, used it to break the curse. By your logic, I'm as guilty as anyone. So here I am. Kill me if you want. But leave them alone." The dragon was silent for a long moment. Then it laughed, a sound like boulders rolling down a mountain. "Brave, foolish, very human." Its eyes shifted to Darian. "And you, frozen king, you allowed the witch to rule in your name, to use our pain to sustain your empty life. What do you offer in payment?" Darian stepped forward, standing beside Lyra. "My kingdom," he said. "Not as payment, as partnership. You want revenge? Help me tear down everything Velka built, every corrupted treaty, every poisoned alliance, every structure she created to maintain her power. We burn it all and build something better. And in return, freedom, territory, respect. Everything that was stolen from you returned." Darian's voice carried across the courtyard, loud enough for every watching human to hear. "Or you can kill us all and rule over ashes. Your choice." The dragon's gaze shifted between them, the king who'd been frozen for 3 centuries and the girl who'd set him free. Finally, it spoke. "Your offer is acceptable, but the debt remains. The stolen power must be paid." Its eye fixed on Lyra. "You carry our brother's essence. You will return it by becoming his vessel, his voice, his living avatar in this world." "What does that mean?" "It means you are no longer fully human. It means you will speak for us, fight for us, carry our power until your death returns it to the earth." The dragon lowered its head until its snout almost touched her. "Do you accept?" Lyra looked at Darian. He shook his head slightly. "You don't have to. I'll find another way." "There is no other way." Lyra turned back to the dragon. "I accept." "Then kneel." She knelt. The dragon touched its nose to her forehead. Pain exploded through every nerve in Lyra's body, fire and ice and lightning all at once. She felt her bones crack, reform, strengthen, felt her blood ignite, felt something ancient and vast pour into her, filling spaces she hadn't known were empty. When it finally stopped, she was lying on the ground, gasping. Darian was beside her, helping her sit up. "Lyra, can you hear me?" She nodded. Her vision had changed. She could see heat signatures now, could smell individual people in the crowd, could feel the earth beneath the fortress stretching down into darkness where more dragons still slept. "What happened to me?" she whispered. The black dragon spread its wings. "You became what you were always meant to be, dragon speaker. Bridge between worlds and—" It paused, almost smiling. "The first serious challenger to the throne we've seen in centuries. I don't want the throne. What you want is irrelevant. What you are, that matters. The dragon launched itself into the air, the other dragons following. Their voices echoed across the night. We will return in 7 days. Have your answer ready. Will you rebuild this kingdom into something worth protecting? Or shall we finish what we started tonight and reduce it to ash? Then they were gone, leaving Lyra kneeling in a destroyed courtyard, glowing faintly with golden light, every eye in the fortress staring at her. Serena Grendale pushed through the crowd, her cream dress torn and dirty. Well, she said loudly, this should be interesting. Behind her, 100 nobles murmured agreement, and somewhere in the ruins of the North Tower, hidden in shadows and smoke, something that looked like Velka's corpse opened its eyes and smiled. The corpse's smile widened in the darkness. Then the thing that had been Velka Draven dragged itself upright. Skin hung loose on bones that should have been dust. One eye was gone, the socket black and empty. But the other eye still blazed with intelligence, and hatred so pure it seemed to burn. Clever girl, Velka whispered to the empty ruins, but not clever enough. Her remaining hand reached into the rubble, pulling free a shard of obsidian, part of some ritual object shattered in the explosion. She pressed it to her chest, and dark energy began to pool around the wound, not healing, reanimating. She'd spent 200 years preparing for every contingency, even death. Across the fortress, Lyra swayed on her feet, the dragon's power still settling into her bones. She could feel every person in the courtyard, their fear, their curiosity, their calculations. Could hear whispered conversations 3 buildings away. Could taste smoke and blood and something else. Something wrong. You need to sit down, Darian said, gripping her elbow. I'm fine. You're glowing, and your eyes just turned gold. That's not fine. Lyra blinked. The golden light faded slightly, and the overwhelming sensory input dimmed to something manageable. Better? Marginally. Darian turned to address the crowd. Everyone return to your quarters. Emergency protocols remain in effect. Captain Torvin will coordinate. No. Every head turned. Serena Grendale stepped forward, and she wasn't alone. A dozen other nobles flanked her, lords and ladies from the most powerful houses, all wearing expressions that ranged from angry to terrified to calculating. We're not returning to our quarters like obedient children, Serena continued. Not after what we just witnessed. Not after learning our king has been cursed for 3 centuries, our chief advisor was a power-hungry witch. And dragons, actual dragons, are demanding answers we can't provide. What do you want, Serena? Darian's voice went flat. Answers, starting with her. Serena pointed at Lyra. This vagrant appears out of nowhere, disrupts a centuries-old curse, causes the death of Lady Velka, and now apparently speaks for dragons. Forgive us for being suspicious. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Lord Grendale pushed forward. My daughter raises valid concerns. This girl has no lineage, no pack, no verifiable history. For all we know, she's a spy sent by Eastern territories to destabilize. She saved my life, Darian cut in, or manipulated events to appear that way. To gain your trust, your favor. Grendale's eyes narrowed. You've been isolated for 300 years, my king. You have no frame of reference for deception, but we do. And this... He gestured at the destroyed towers, the scorch marks, the chaos. This looks like sabotage. Careful, Grendale. Torvin's hand went to his sword. You're accusing the king of being compromised. I'm stating facts. Our kingdom is in ruins. Our defenses are compromised. And the only person who benefits is this mysterious girl who now apparently wields dragon magic. Lyra felt the crowd's mood shifting. Fear was easier than trust. Blame was easier than understanding. She'd seen it before in smaller packs, smaller communities, the way people turned on outsiders when things went wrong. You want to blame me, she said. Fine, but answer this first. If I'm a spy, why did I climb your walls alone? Why offer bread instead of bribes? Why fight to break a curse that was clearly benefiting someone in power? Theater, Serena said coldly. Elaborate theater to gain access to the king, and it worked, didn't it? He's defending you even now. Because she's telling the truth, Darian said. You believe that. But belief isn't evidence. Serena turned to address the crowd. We need proof. Real, verifiable proof that this girl isn't a threat. And until we have it, she should be confined. For everyone's safety. More nods, more murmurs of agreement. Lyra saw it happening, watched the crowd coalesce around Serena's argument, not because it was true, but because it was simple. Easy. It gave them someone to blame instead of facing the complicated reality that their kingdom had been corrupted from within for centuries. Confining her won't solve anything, Darian said. Perhaps not. But it will buy us time to investigate, to verify her story, to eliminate me before the dragons return? Silence fell. Serena's expression didn't change. I have no idea what you mean. Don't you? Lyra stepped forward. The dragons gave us 7 days to prove this kingdom is worth saving. Without me, without someone who can speak to them, you have no chance of negotiating. So yes, confining me makes perfect sense, if you want them to burn everything. That's absurd. Why would we want? Because some of you profited from Velka's corruption. But Lyra's enhanced senses were picking up patterns now. Elevated heart rates, nervous sweat, micro-expressions of guilt. She didn't maintain all those trade agreements and treaties alone. She had help, partners, people who benefited from keeping the king frozen and powerless while they carved up his kingdom for themselves. Dead silence. Prove it, Grendale said. I can't, not yet, but give me 3 days. Let me investigate Velka's records, interview her associates, trace the money. If I'm wrong, you can confine me yourself. And if you're right, Serena asked, then we expose everyone who helped her. Clean house. Rebuild from honest foundations. Lyra met her eyes. Unless that's exactly what you're afraid of. Serena's jaw tightened. You have no authority to investigate anything. Then I'll give her authority. Darian's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He moved to stand beside Lyra, his presence commanding despite the exhaustion carved into his features. Lyra Ashen is hereby appointed royal investigator with full access to all fortress records and personnel. She will have 3 days to compile evidence. At the end of that time, we'll hold a public tribunal. Anyone she accuses will have the right to defend themselves. Anyone found guilty, he paused, will face the appropriate consequences. My king, Grendale said carefully, this is highly irregular. So is discovering your trusted advisor was draining your life force for 2 centuries. We're in irregular territory, Lord Grendale. Adapt or get out of the way. The crowd shifted uncertainly. Some looked angry, others relieved. A few, Lyra's enhanced senses caught it clearly, looked terrified. Those were the guilty ones. This tribunal, Serena said. Who presides? I do, with Captain Torvin as witness and... Darian hesitated. And whoever the dragons send as their representative, since this concerns our future relationship with them. That sparked a new wave of murmuring, but no one could argue with the logic. Fine, Serena said. 3 days, but she doesn't work alone. I want observers, independent witnesses to ensure the investigation is legitimate. Agreed. Choose 2. Lyra chooses 2. They work together. Serena's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. Acceptable. The crowd began to disperse, nobles clustering in small groups, whispering frantically. Lyra caught fragments of conversation, threats, denials, plans to flee before the investigation reached them. Good. Let them panic. Frightened people made mistakes. When most of the courtyard had cleared, Torven approached. That was either brilliant or suicidal. Probably both, Lyra admitted. Her legs felt shaky now, the adrenaline fading. Can you show me to Velka's office? If I'm going to investigate, I need to start... You need to sleep, Darian interrupted. You absorbed enough dragon magic to kill a normal person. You're running on fumes and stubbornness. I'm fine. You're swaying. Lyra realized he was right. The ground seemed to tilt under her feet. Maybe just a few hours. 12, minimum. Darian nodded to Torvin. Postguards on her door. Friendly ones. If anyone tries to accidentally eliminate our investigator, I want to know about it. Already handled, my king. Darian turned to Lyra. Can you walk? Or do I need to carry you? I can walk. She made it 5 steps before her knees buckled. Darian caught her, swinging her up into his arms with surprising ease. Pride's going to get you killed. Better than weakness. They're not opposites. He carried her toward the East Tower, guards falling into formation around them. You can be strong and ask for help. Shocking, I know. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the pain, the knowledge that half the fortress wanted her dead, Lyra almost laughed. You're different. Then what? Bajim Said. Then the frozen king I met 2 days ago. Darian was quiet for a moment. That king was barely alive. This one, he looked down at her. This one is terrified. Of making wrong decisions, of trusting the wrong people, of failing everyone who's counting on him to suddenly know how to rule after 3 centuries of being a puppet. You're doing fine. I appointed a wolfless vagrant as royal investigator after knowing her for 48 hours. That's not fine. That's insane. Or smart. I'm the only person in this fortress who has nothing to lose and nothing to gain from the old power structures. Lyra met his eyes. I'm also the only person you can trust completely. I know, that's what terrifies me. They reached Lyra's room, or what remained of it. The East Tower had taken damage during the dragon attack. Half the furniture was destroyed, and moonlight streamed through a crack in the wall. We'll move you to safer quarters, Darian said, setting her down on the intact bed. This is fine. The wall has a hole. I've slept in worse. He started to argue, then stopped. Of course you have. He moved to the door, paused. Lyra, what you did tonight, standing up to that dragon, that was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Again, probably both. Probably. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start dismantling a 200-year-old conspiracy. He left. Lyra lay back on the bed, her body screaming for sleep. But her mind wouldn't stop racing. 3 days. She had 3 days to prove that powerful nobles had been complicit in Velka's corruption. 3 days to find evidence that would convince dragons not to burn the kingdom. 3 days to... Something moved in the shadows. Lyra was upright instantly, the dragon's power flooding her senses. She could see the figure clearly now, female, moving with unnatural grace, emerging from the crack in the wall. Peace, the figure said. I'm not here to fight. The woman stepped into the moonlight, and Lyra's breath caught. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, silver hair like Velka's, but younger, with eyes that seemed to shift between blue and green and gray. She wore simple traveling clothes, and a sword hung at her hip. Who are you? My name is Kira Draven, Velka's granddaughter. She raised her hands, showing they were empty. And before you attack, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to help. Help how? By giving you this. Kira pulled a leather journal from her pack. My grandmother's personal records. The real ones, not the sanitized versions in her office. Names, dates, amounts. Everyone she worked with, everyone she controlled, everyone who helped maintain the curse. Lyra took the journal carefully. Why? Because she is not dead. The room went cold. What? My grandmother spent 200 years preparing for every possibility, including her own death. She has contingencies, backup plans. Right now, she's somewhere in this fortress, healing, gathering power, preparing to strike. Kira's expression was grim. And her first target will be you. Then why give me this? If she's your grandmother, she killed my mother, drained her life force when she needed a power boost and didn't want to risk weakening the king too much. I was 6. Kira's voice was flat, emotionless. I've spent 20 years pretending to be loyal, learning her secrets, waiting for someone strong enough to actually stop her. You're that person. I'm nobody. You're a dragon speaker who survived absorbing enough power to destroy a city. You're not nobody. Kira moved toward the window. Read the journal. It has everything you need. But work fast. My grandmother will strike within 72 hours, probably during your tribunal, when everyone's watching. Wait. How do I know you're telling the truth? This could be another trap. Kira paused at the window. You'll know because I'm about to do something that will prove my loyalty. Something my grandmother will kill me for if she finds out. What? I'm going to tell you where she hid the antidote, The one that can save those 2 women who were poisoned. It's in the medical wing, blue vial, locked cabinet behind the head healer's desk. The key is under the 3rd floor tile from the door. Why would you? Because if you save them, people will start believing you, start trusting you, and you'll need that trust when my grandmother makes her move. Kira climbed onto the window ledge. 3 days, Lyra Ashen. Use them well. She dropped into the darkness. Lyra ran to the window, but Kira had vanished completely. She looked down at the journal in her hands, opened it to the first page, and saw her own name. Lyra Ashen, suspected dragon speaker. Mother, unknown. Father, Aldrich Vexmore, executed for treason 17 years ago. The child was reported killed in the purge. If alive, eliminate immediately. Cannot risk the bloodline resurfacing. Lyra read it 3 times. Aldrich Vexmore. Vexmore. She looked up, out the window toward where Darian's quarters would be, and realized why she had been able to touch him without dying, why the curse had recognized her, why the dragon's power had accepted her so easily. She wasn't just a vagrant, she was Darian's daughter. Lyra's hand shook as she flipped through the journal. More names appeared, nobles she'd seen in the courtyard, guards, servants, even some of the women from the selection, all connected to Velka through bribes, blackmail, or blood. And at the very end, a list of dates marked elimination schedule. Tomorrow's date had 3 names: Captain Torvin, Marta, head housekeeper, Lyra Ashen. Velka was planning to kill them all. Lyra closed the journal and stood. Sleep could wait. She had people to save. The medical wing was in the south tower, miraculously intact despite the dragon attack. Lyra made her way through darkened corridors, avoiding guard patrols, using her enhanced senses to navigate. The head healer's office was locked. Lyra picked it in 15 seconds. Inside, she found the cabinet exactly where Kira had described. The blue vial sat among dozens of others, labeled in Velka's precise handwriting. Antidote. Decay poison. Lyra grabbed it and ran. The 2 surviving selection candidates were in the quarantine ward, separated from other patients. Guards stood at the door, but they knew Lyra by sight now. Royal investigator business, she said. They let her through. The women lay in adjacent beds, their skin gray and waxy, their breathing shallow. One of them was Serena's cousin. The other was a girl barely older than Lyra, from a minor house in the Northern Territories. Lyra uncorked the vial and carefully measured doses into their mouths. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the younger girl gasped. Color flooded back into her face. Her breathing deepened. Her eyes fluttered open. What? Where? You're safe, Lyra said. Just rest. The second woman, Serena's cousin, woke moments later, equally confused but clearly recovering. Lyra called for the healers, then slipped out before they could ask questions. By morning, word would spread. The royal investigator had saved 2 lives on her first night. That was a start. Lyra made her way back toward her quarters, exhausted but wired. Her mind was still reeling from the revelation in the journal. Darian's daughter. How was that possible? He'd been cursed for 300 years, frozen and unable to, unless the curse hadn't always been complete. Unless Velka had allowed him one brief window, one moment of warmth, of feeling, of life, just long enough to father a child she could then use as leverage. And when that child became a liability instead of an asset, the ambush came from nowhere. 1 second, Lyra was alone in the corridor. The next, 3 figures dropped from the ceiling, assassins in dark clothing, blades already swinging. Lyra moved on instinct. The dragon's power surged through her, turning the world bright and sharp. She ducked the first blade, caught the second assassin's wrist, and twisted hard enough to hear bones snap. The third assassin was faster. His knife scraped across Lyra's ribs, drawing blood. Pain exploded through her side, but she used the momentum to drive her elbow into his throat. He went down choking. The first assassin recovered, coming at her again. Lyra didn't think, just reacted. Golden light exploded from her hands, slamming the assassin into the wall hard enough to crack stone. He slumped, unconscious. Footsteps thundered down the corridor. Guards appeared, weapons drawn, then froze at the scene. 3 unconscious assassins and Lyra standing in the center, bleeding and glowing. Get Captain Torvin, she said. Now! 20 minutes later, Torvin stood in his office, interrogating the one assassin who'd woken up. Lyra sat nearby, her ribs bandaged, still trying to process everything. Who hired you? Torvin demanded. The assassin just smiled. I can make this very unpleasant, Torvin continued. Can't be worse than what she'll do if I talk. She? Velka's dead. Is she? The assassin's smile widened. You people are idiots. You think you killed her? She's been preparing for her own death for decades. Right now she's healing, getting stronger, and when she's ready... He bit down hard. Poison. He was dead before Torvin could stop him. Damn it! Torvin slammed his fist on the desk. That's the third one tonight. Someone's eliminating loose ends. Velka, Lyra said quietly. She's alive, and she's cleaning up. Torvin looked at her. How do you know? Lyra pulled out the journal. Because her granddaughter warned me. She told him everything. Kira's visit, the journal, the antidote, the revelation about her father. When she finished, Torvin was silent for a long time. Aldrich Vexmore, he finally said. I remember him. Good man. Loyal. He served the king faithfully for years. Then one day, Velka accused him of treason, said he'd been plotting to overthrow Darien. He was executed within hours. Why? Officially? For trying to break the curse. Unofficially? Torvin met her eyes. He'd figured out Velka was the anchor, was planning to expose her. She struck first. And his family? Wife and daughter, supposedly killed in the purge. His house was burned. No survivors. Torvin's expression softened. But you survived. My mother must have hidden me. Got me out somehow. Lyra's throat tightened. I don't remember any of it. Just running, being alone. You were 11. The age matches. Torvin stood. Does the king know? Not yet. I need to tell him, but first we need to survive the next 3 days. Exactly. Torvin moved to a locked cabinet, pulled out a sword. Take this. If Velka's alive and planning to strike, you need better than a butter knife. Lyra took the weapon. It was lighter than she expected, balanced perfectly. I don't know how to use a sword. Then you'll learn fast, because in 3 days, when that tribunal happens, Torvin's expression was grim. Velka will make her move, and everyone in that room will be a target. Dawn broke over the fortress, painting the destroyed towers in shades of orange and gold. Lyra stood in her quarters, the sword at her hip, Velka's journal in her hands, and a plan forming in her mind. 3 days. She could work with that. She'd start by interviewing everyone in the journal, build cases, gather evidence, and when Velka finally showed herself, Lyra would be ready. A knock at her door. Come in. Darien entered, took one look at her bandaged ribs, and went pale. What happened? Assassins. 3 of them. I'm fine. You're bleeding. Barely. The dragon magic is already healing it. She showed him. The wound was closing even as they spoke. New skin forming over torn flesh. See? Fine. That's not fine. That's terrifying. Darien moved closer. Who sent them? Velka. She's alive. Lyra explained everything again. By the end, Darien looked like he wanted to punch something. My daughter, yeah, he said quietly. You're my daughter. Apparently. And Velka knew, used you as leverage, then tried to have you killed. Also, apparently. Darien was quiet for a long moment, then, I'm sorry. For what? For not protecting you, for not knowing you existed, for... Stop. Lyra cut him off. You were cursed, frozen. You couldn't have protected anyone, and I survived anyway. Turned out okay, considering. You call this okay? Assassins, dragons, a conspiracy that wants you dead? Better than being alone. The words slipped out before Lyra could stop them. For 6 years, I thought I was nobody. Worthless. Cursed. And now I have a father. A purpose. People who need me. She met his eyes. So yeah, this is okay. Darien stared at her. Then he pulled her into a hug. It was awkward. Neither of them knew how to do this, how to be family after everything. But it was real, warm, human. When they finally pulled apart, Darian's eyes were wet. 3 days, he said. We have 3 days to build a case strong enough to convince nobles, dragons, and whatever's left of this kingdom that we're not completely insane. And to stop Velka from killing everyone during the tribunal. That too. He managed a rough laugh. No pressure. None at all. Over the next 72 hours, Lyra barely slept. She interviewed servants who'd witnessed Velka's meetings, tracked financial records showing bribes and payoffs, found 3 more assassination attempts, stopped 2, survived 1. Each time she got faster, stronger. The dragon's power was learning her rhythms, adapting to her fighting style. Torvin trained her in spare moments, teaching her how to actually use the sword instead of just waving it around. Darian worked on stabilizing the kingdom, reassuring allies, threatening rivals, trying to hold together a power structure that had been rotting from within for centuries. And the evidence piled up. By the morning of the tribunal, Lyra had 17 confirmed co-conspirators, lords who'd taken bribes to look the other way, guards who'd eliminated Velka's enemies, even 2 members of the royal council who'd helped maintain the curse in exchange for land and titles. It was enough to tear the kingdom apart, or rebuild it. The tribunal was held in the Grand Hall, the only space large enough for everyone who'd demanded to attend. Nobles packed the galleries, guards lined the walls, and at the center, Darian sat on the Blackstone throne with Lyra standing to his right and Torvin to his left. Serena and her chosen observers sat in the front row, watching everything with hawk-like attention. And perched on the rafters above, barely visible in the shadows, a dragon. Smaller than the ones who'd attacked, but still massive. Its golden eyes watched the proceedings with an intelligence that made Lyra's skin prickle. We're gathered, Darian began, his voice carrying across the hall, to hear evidence of corruption within our kingdom. Evidence compiled by royal investigator Lyra Ashen over the past 3 days. Miss Ashen, present your findings. Lyra stepped forward. She'd prepared a speech, something formal and official. But looking at the faces in the crowd, some guilty, some innocent, all afraid, she threw it away. For 300 years, she said, this kingdom has been controlled by a curse, not just the one affecting your king, but a deeper curse, corruption disguised as loyalty. People who claimed to serve while actually feeding on what they were supposed to protect. She pulled out Velka's journal. This contains 200 years of records, names, dates, crimes. I could spend hours reading them all. But instead, I'm going to start with a simple question. Who here has taken a bribe from Velka Dreven? Silence. No one. Because I have 17 names. Should I start calling them out? A man in the third row stood. This is absurd. You're relying on the word of a woman you claim is our enemy. I'm relying on bank records, trade agreements, signed contracts. Lyra gestured to a table piled with documents. Everything cross-referenced and verified. So I'll ask again, anyone want to confess now, or should we do this the hard way? Another silence. Then Lord Grendale stood. I took money, he said quietly. 20 years ago, Velka offered to overlook certain indiscretions in exchange for supporting her policies. I accepted. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Anyone else? Lyra asked. Slowly, others stood. One by one, nobles admitted to bribes, blackmail, turning blind eyes to Velka's machinations. Not all of them, but enough. Thank you for your honesty, Darian said. His voice was cold. Your confessions will be taken into account during sentencing. For now, the dragon roared, not in anger, in warning. Every head turned, and from the shadows at the back of the hall, Velka emerged. She looked like a corpse reanimated by pure spite, skin hanging loose, one eye missing, dark magic crackling around her skeletal hands. But she was alive and furious. How touching, she said. My kingdom tears itself apart while playing at justice. But you've forgotten something crucial. She raised her hands, and every person who'd confessed, every noble who'd stood and admitted guilt, began to scream. They collapsed, clawing at their chests as dark energy poured from their bodies into Velka. She was draining them, feeding on their life force just like she'd fed on Darian. Stop! Lyra ran forward. Too late, child. They swore oaths to me. Blood oaths. Breaking them has consequences. Velka's missing eye began to regenerate, fueled by stolen life. But thank you for gathering them all in one place. Very convenient. Lyra looked at the dragon. It dropped from the rafters, landing between Velka and the crowd. You dare use blood magic in our presence? Its voice shook the foundations. You dare continue your corruption even after death? I dare everything. Velka's skin was smoothing, her body healing. I spent 200 years becoming something beyond death, beyond dragons, beyond everything. You can't stop me. No one can. The dragon lunged. Velka caught it with pure magic, holding it suspended in midair like a puppet. See? She laughed. Even your champions are... Lyra stabbed her from behind. The sword, Torvin's sword, given with the simple advice, learn fast, punched through Velka's back and outer chest. Velka looked down at the blade, then back at Lyra. Clever, she whispered. Using the distraction, Lyra poured dragon fire into the sword. Golden light erupted from the blade, burning through Velka from the inside out. The dark magic unraveled. The stolen life force fled back to its owners, and Velka's body began to crumble, this time for real. This won't end, Velka gasped. I have contingencies, plans within plans. Then I'll stop those too. Lyra pulled the sword free. Because I'm not alone anymore. I have a father, allies, dragons, and I'm done being afraid of ghosts. Velka collapsed into ash. This time she didn't get back up. The hall erupted into chaos, half the nobles cheering, others weeping over the fallen, the dragon roaring in what might have been approval. Lyra swayed, exhausted, the sword hanging from her fingers. Darian caught her before she fell. You did it, he said. We did it. Semantics. He helped her stand. How did you know the dragonfire would work? I didn't, but she was vulnerable while channeling that much magic. Figured it was worth a shot. Boom, ditopshamipat. Above them, the dragon landed on the throne's platform. The debt is paid, it announced to the hall. The speaker has proven her worth. The kingdom has purged its corruption. We will honor the alliance, but know this. We are watching. Fail again, and no speaker will save you. It spread its wings and flew through the open doors, disappearing into the dawn sky. Silence fell. Then Serena started clapping. It started slow, uncertain, but others joined in. Within seconds, the entire hall was applauding. For Lyra, for Darian, for survival against impossible odds. Lyra looked at the crowd and saw it clearly. They weren't just celebrating victory. They were celebrating change. The frozen king had thawed. The curse was broken. The old guard had fallen. And standing in the ashes of the old kingdom was something new, something better, something worth fighting for. Darian raised his hand, and the applause faded. We have much work ahead, he said, rebuilding, healing, learning to govern without corruption. But today we prove something important. Even the darkest curse can be broken. Even the coldest heart can thaw. Even a kingdom built on lies can find truth. He turned to Lyra, and it all started because one starving girl offered bread to a frozen king. He knelt. The entire hall gasped. Lyra Ashen, my daughter, my savior, our dragon speaker. I offer you not a crown, but a choice. Help me rebuild this kingdom. Stand as my equal, not as decoration or duty, but as partner, as family. Lyra stared at him, at the hall full of people watching, at the future stretching out before her, terrifying and bright. She took his hand and pulled him to his feet. No kneeling, she said. We're equals, remember? That means we stand together. Darian smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Together, he agreed. And somewhere in the ruins of the North Tower, the last trace of Velka's ash finally stopped smoldering. The curse was over. The kingdom was theirs. And the real work was just beginning. The work started immediately, not with grand proclamations or celebratory feasts, but with sleeves rolled up and hard decisions that needed making before the sun finished rising. Darian had dismissed the tribunal with orders to reconvene in 3 days for sentencing hearings. The nobles who'd confessed would face justice, stripped titles for some, exile for others, execution for the worst offenders. But first, the kingdom needed stabilizing before it tore itself apart. Lyra found herself in the war room, surrounded by maps she barely understood, and advisors who still looked at her like she might explode at any moment. The eastern territories are already mobilizing, reported a thin man with ink-stained fingers. Word of Velka's death reached them this morning. They're testing our borders. Let them test, Darian said. He stood at the map table, more alive than Lyra had ever seen him. 3 days out from the curse breaking, and color had fully returned to his face, warmth to his voice. Send a message. Any incursion will be met with dragonfire. Literally. My king, we can't just threaten. I'm not threatening. I'm stating facts. Darian glanced at Lyra. We have an alliance now. Use it. The advisors shifted uncomfortably. Lyra understood their discomfort. She felt it too, this sudden power, this responsibility she'd never asked for. But backing down now would undo everything. I'll speak to them, she said. The dragons. Make it clear that attacks on this kingdom are attacks on our alliance. Can you do that? Asked the ink-stained advisor. I'm about to find out. She left the war room and climbed to the highest intact tower. The morning air was cold, sharp, clearing her head. Below, the fortress buzzed with activity, servants clearing rubble, builders assessing damage, guards patrolling with renewed purpose. It looked like chaos. It felt like hope. Lyra closed her eyes and reached for the connection she'd felt when the dragon had touched her. The power still hummed in her chest, warm and alive, waiting. I need to speak with you, she thought into that warmth. For a moment, nothing. Then a shadow passed over the sun. The black dragon landed on the tower's edge, wings folding with a sound like sails catching wind. Up close, its scales were iridescent, not just black but deep blue, purple, green, depending on the light. Speaker, it rumbled, you call and we answer. What troubles the new kingdom? The old enemies, they're testing us, looking for weakness. And you want us to demonstrate strength. I want to avoid war if possible, but if they push, then we push back, harder. The dragon's eyes gleamed. We are not pets, Speaker. We do not perform tricks to frighten humans, but neither do we tolerate threats to our allies. Give us one target, one clear example. The rest will learn. Lyra thought fast. The eastern border. There's a fortress there, Black Ridge. They've been raiding our villages for months, taking the curse as permission to expand. One show of force there, and the other territories will get the message. Black Ridge will burn by sunset. The dragon shifted, its massive head tilting to study her. You're learning quickly how to use power without drowning in it. Your father chose well when his blood made you. I didn't ask to be born. No one does. But you chose to climb a wall, chose to offer bread, chose to fight when you could have fled. Those choices made you who you are more than any bloodline. The dragon spread its wings. We will speak again in 7 days. Bring your father. We have much to discuss about this new alliance. It launched into the sky, a dark streak against morning clouds. Lyra watched it go, then descended back into the chaos of rebuilding. The next crisis came that afternoon. Lyra was in Velka's old office, now hers, though she'd stripped out most of the furniture and burned the ritual objects, when Torvin burst in. We have a problem. Add it to the list. This one's different. The prisoners, the nobles awaiting sentencing, 12 of them are demanding trial by combat. Lyra looked up from the stack of documents she'd been reviewing. That's a thing? Ancient law. Any noble can demand to face their accuser in single combat instead of judgment. If they win, they go free. And if they lose? Death. Immediately. Torvin's expression was grim. They're counting on you being inexperienced, easy to kill. How many has Darian accepted? None yet. He wanted to discuss it with you first. Lyra stood, her hand going automatically to the sword at her hip, Torvin's sword, which she'd kept after the tribunal. It felt natural there now, like it belonged. Where is he? Training yard, where he's been since dawn, trying to remember 300 years of combat skills. Lyra found Darian stripped to the waist, sparring with 2 guards simultaneously. Sweat gleamed on his skin as he moved, faster than any human should be able to move. The curse's suppression of his power finally lifted. He disarmed one guard, ducked the other's strike, and had both on the ground in seconds. "Again," he ordered. The guards climbed to their feet, looking exhausted. Lyra cleared her throat. Darian spun, reflexively raising his practice sword, then lowered it when he saw her. "You're supposed to be reviewing trade agreements. Trade agreements can wait. Apparently 12 nobles want to kill me in formal combat. I heard. I'm rejecting all of them." "Why?" "Because you've been training for 3 days. They've been training their entire lives. It's suicide. So was climbing your wall. So was fighting Velka. So was standing up to dragons." Lyra stepped into the training circle. "If I refuse, it makes us look weak. Makes me look weak. Every ambitious noble in the kingdom will see it as proof that I don't belong here." "You don't have to prove anything." "Yes, I do. To them. To myself." She drew her sword. "And to you." "You said we're equals, partners." "That means I fight my own battles." Darian was quiet for a long moment. Then, "One condition, you fight me first, right now. If you win, I approve the trials. If you lose, I accept whatever sentencing you decide without combat. Deal." They circled each other, practice swords raised. "I won't go easy on you," Darian warned. "Good. I hate pity." He attacked. Lyra barely blocked the first strike. The second nearly disarmed her. The third would have killed her if the blade had been real. She hit the ground hard, the practice sword flying from her grip. Darian stood over her. "You lose. Best 2 out of 3. Lyra, 2 out of 3. Or I accept the trials anyway, and you look like a controlling father instead of a partner king." His jaw tightened. Then he offered his hand, pulled her up. "You fight dirty." "I fight to win. There's a difference." They went again. This time Lyra lasted longer, dodging instead of blocking, using speed over strength, letting Darian's power work against him, but he was too experienced, too fast. He had her disarmed in 90 seconds. 2-0, he said. Lyra picked up the sword. "One more. This is pointless. One more. Please." Something in her voice made him pause, made him see not just his daughter, but the girl who'd survived 6 years alone, who'd climbed walls and faced dragons and refused to be broken by anything the world threw at her. "Fine. One more. Besi peparium bimasmuopo." They raised their swords. This time Lyra didn't try to match his skill. Instead, she reached for the dragon's power. It flooded her senses, made everything sharper, faster, clearer. She could see Darian's tells now, the tiny shifts in weight that telegraphed his strikes. Could predict his movements before he made them. When he attacked, she was already moving. She ducked under his blade, swept his legs, and had her sword at his throat before he hit the ground. They froze. Darian looked up at her, surprise clear on his face. "Using dragon magic is cheating," he said. "No rules against it." "There are implied. I don't do implied. I do survival." Lyra lowered the sword, offered her hand. "And if those nobles want trial by combat, they'll get exactly what I just gave you. Everything I have, no holding back, no mercy." Darian took her hand, let her pull him up. "You're terrifying. I'm your daughter. It's genetic." Despite everything, he laughed. "Fine, I'll approve 3 trials. Your choice which 3. But you train seriously first. With me. With Torvin. With anyone who can teach you to fight without relying solely on dragon magic. Because eventually you'll face someone who can counter it, and then skill is all you'll have left. Deal." They shook on it, and Lyra felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, but close. Acceptance. Belonging. She had a father who treated her like an equal. That was worth fighting for. The trials were set for 3 days later, giving Lyra time to train and the kingdom time to prepare. Word spread fast. The dragon speaker would face her accusers in single combat. Nobles from across the territory demanded to attend. Merchants set up viewing stands. Someone started taking bets. Lyra tried to ignore it all and focus on training. Darian worked her until her muscles screamed. Torvin taught her tricks. How to fight dirty, how to use size disadvantage as advantage, how to end fights fast before skill could dominate. And at night, alone in her quarters, Lyra studied Velka's journal. There were gaps in the records, coded entries that referenced contingency plans and fail-safe measures without explaining what they were. Kira's warning echoed in Lyra's mind. She's not dead. She has contingencies. But Lyra had watched Velka turn to ash, had felt the curse shatter completely. What contingency could survive that? The morning of the first trial, Lyra woke before dawn to find Marta in her room. "You're supposed to knock," Lyra said. "I did. You were asleep." Marta set down a tray of food. "Eat. You'll need strength." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway. And stop looking so terrified. You faced worse than some noble with a sword." "Have I? You climbed a fortress wall with no plan and broken boots. This is practically relaxing." Marta's expression softened. "The entire staff is betting on you, by the way. We pooled our wages, so don't embarrass us by dying. I'll do my best." "Good. Now eat." Lyra ate. By mid-morning, the courtyard had transformed into an arena. Hastily constructed stands surrounded a raised platform where the combat would take place. Thousands of people packed every available space. Nobles in their finest, common folk who'd traveled from across the territory, even some merchants from eastern kingdoms come to witness the spectacle. Darian sat on a throne brought out specifically for this purpose, Torven standing guard beside him. Lyra stood opposite, wearing simple combat leathers and carrying her sword. The first challenger entered the arena to roaring applause. Lord Marcus of House Brennan, a man in his 40s, muscled like a bull, carrying a sword that looked like it could cleave horses in half. He'd confessed to taking bribes and looking the other way while Velka eliminated rivals. Now he thought he could escape justice by killing a girl. The crowd quieted as Darian stood. "The term, he announced, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Single combat to first blood, surrender or death. The victor's judgment stands. No interference from outside parties. Do both combatants accept these terms?" "I accept," Marcus said. "I accept," Lyra echoed. "Then begin." Marcus didn't waste time with posturing. He charged immediately, his massive sword swinging in an arc meant to cut Lyra in half. She dropped and rolled, feeling the blade whistle past her head. Too close. He recovered faster than she expected, reversing the swing. Lyra barely got her sword up in time to block. The impact sent shockwaves up her arms, nearly knocked her blade loose. Stronger than Darian, heavier, used to overwhelming opponents with pure power. Lyra couldn't match that, so she didn't try. She let the dragon's power flood her senses, turned the world sharp and bright. Marcus moved in slow motion now. She could see every muscle twitch, every shift in balance. When he swung again, she wasn't there. She ducked under the blade, inside his guard, and drove her elbow into his ribs. Felt something crack. Used his moment of shock to sweep his legs. He went down hard. Lyra had her sword at his throat before he could recover. "Yield," she said. Marcus stared up at her, fury and disbelief warring on his face. "Yield," Lyra repeated, "or I end it here. He swallowed. "I yield." The crowd erupted. Lyra stepped back, lowered her sword, and offered her hand. Marcus stared at it for a long moment, then took it, let her help him up. "You fight like a demon," he said. "I fight to survive. There's a difference." Lyra met his eyes. "Your confession bought you this trial. Losing it buys you exile instead of execution. Take the mercy and use it better." Marcus nodded slowly. "I will." He left the arena to mixed reactions, some cheering his survival, others booing his defeat. Darian caught Lyra's eye across the courtyard, gave a small nod. 1 down, 2 to go. The second trial was harder. Lady Ashton was a duelist, trained from childhood, winner of a dozen tournaments, carrying a rapier that moved like liquid silver. She'd admitted to helping Velka arrange accidents for problematic nobles. Now she intended to prove her skill hadn't diminished with age. "I respect what you've accomplished," she said as they took positions. "But respect won't save you. I've killed better fighters than you before breakfast." "Good thing it's afternoon," Lyra replied. They began. Ashton was fast. Faster than Marcus, faster than Darian, possibly faster than Lyra even with dragon magic enhancing her reflexes. The rapier flicked out like a snake's tongue, testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. Lyra blocked, dodged, retreated. The crowd murmured. Some thought she was losing. Others recognized the strategy, letting her opponent expend energy, learning patterns. Ashton lunged. Lyra sidestepped, barely, and felt the rapier graze her shoulder. First blood. Ashton had scored first blood. "Yield," Ashton said. "You fought well, but this is over." "No." Lyra's hand went to the shallow cut. Her fingers came away red. And something in her snapped. The dragon's power exploded outward. Not controlled, not measured, just pure instinctive fury. Golden light blazed from her skin, her eyes, her sword. Ashton stumbled back. "What?" Lyra attacked. She wasn't thinking anymore, wasn't using technique or strategy, just moving on pure instinct, the dragon's power guiding every strike. Her sword became a blur of motion, overwhelming Ashton's defenses through sheer relentless pressure. The rapier went flying. Lyra's sword stopped an inch from Ashton's throat. The golden light faded. Lyra stood there, breathing hard, her mind catching up to what her body had just done. "I yield," Ashton whispered. "Mercy." Lyra lowered her sword. The crowd was silent. Then someone started chanting, "Dragon Speaker! Dragon Speaker!" It spread through the stands like wildfire, hundreds of voices taking up the call. Lyra looked at Darian. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, pride mixed with concern mixed with something else. Recognition, maybe. Recognition that his daughter was becoming something more than human. The third trial never happened. The final challenger, a young lord who'd confessed to smuggling contraband for Velka, took one look at Lyra standing in the arena, still glowing faintly with residual dragon power, and withdrew his challenge. "I'll accept exile," he said. "I'm not stupid enough to fight whatever that is." Smart man. The trials concluded, Darian dismissed the crowd and called an emergency council meeting. Lyra attended, still riding the adrenaline high from the fights. "We need to discuss what just happened," Darian said without preamble. "That power you displayed, that wasn't controlled. That was instinct overriding reason." "I won, didn't I?" "You could have killed Lady Ashton. Would have, if you hadn't pulled back at the last second. But I did pull back. This time." Darian's expression was serious. "The dragon's power is growing stronger. It's integrating with you faster than we anticipated. We need to find a way to help you control it before what? Before I become dangerous?" Lyra felt anger rising. "I'm already dangerous. That's the point. People needed to see that challenging us has consequences. People needed to see justice, not a glowing warrior who might lose control and burn the kingdom." "I'm not going to burn the kingdom. You don't know that." Darian's voice rose to match hers. "You've had this power for less than a week. You don't know what it's capable of. What you're capable of. Then help me learn instead of lecturing me. You're trying to control me. Just like everyone else in my life tried to control me, cage me, make me smaller so I'd fit into whatever box they thought I belonged in. Well, I don't fit in boxes. I never have. And I'm not going to start now just because it makes you uncomfortable." Silence fell over the council chamber. Darian stared at her. "That's not what Isn't it?" Lyra's voice dropped. "You said we're equals, partners. But at the first sign I might be more powerful than you expected, you're trying to put limits on me, trying to make me manageable. That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" Lyra laughed bitterly. "I spent 6 years sleeping in ditches and eating garbage. I climbed your fortress wall because I had nothing left to lose. I broke your curse, killed your advisor, made peace with dragons, and proved myself in combat. And you're worried I might be too dangerous?" She turned to leave. "Where are you going?" Darian asked. "To find someone who actually trusts me." She left before he could respond. Lyra found Torvin in the barracks, organizing the evening guard rotation. "I need to talk," she said. He took one look at her face and dismissed the guards. "What happened?" "Darian thinks I'm losing control, thinks the dragon power is making me dangerous." "Are you?" "I don't know. Maybe. Does it matter?" Torvin was quiet for a moment. "Sit." They sat. "When I first met you," Torvin said, You were being dragged into a throne room in rope and rags. You looked half dead, but you stood in front of the most powerful man in the kingdom and offered him bread. Do you remember what I thought? That I was insane? That you were the bravest person I'd ever seen? Or the most foolish, probably both. Torvin smiled. You've always had power, Lyra. Not dragon magic, just you. Your refusal to be crushed by circumstances that should have killed you. Your ability to see solutions where others see only walls. That hasn't changed. But the dragon power makes you stronger, faster, more dangerous. But it doesn't change who you are at the core. Torvin met her eyes. The king is afraid. Not of you, of losing you, of watching this power consume you the way the curse consumed him. He's not trying to control you. He's trying to protect you. I don't need protecting. Everyone needs protecting, even dragon speakers with nothing to lose. Torvin stood. Go talk to him. Actually talk, not fight. You're both too stubborn to back down in an argument, so stop arguing and start listening. Lyra wanted to refuse, wanted to storm off and prove she didn't need anyone. But Torvin was right. She found Darian in his private chambers, staring at maps without really seeing them. I'm sorry, she said from the doorway. He looked up, surprised. For what? For attacking you instead of listening, for assuming the worst. She stepped inside. Torvin said you're afraid. Is that true? Darian was quiet for a long moment. Yes. Of me? Of losing you to something I can't protect you from. The curse took 300 years from me. Turned me into a corpse while I was still breathing. I don't want to watch the dragon's power do the same to you. It won't. You can't know that. No, but I can choose to believe it, choose to trust that I'm strong enough to handle this. Lyra moved closer. I need you to believe that too. Not because I'm perfect or invincible, but because I need someone in my corner who thinks I can survive impossible odds. I've spent my whole life being told I'm worthless, cursed, wrong. I need my father to believe I'm more than that. Darian's expression cracked. I do believe that. I believe you're stronger than anyone I've ever met. That's what terrifies me, because the strongest people are the ones who burn brightest and burn out fastest. Then teach me not to burn out. Help me learn control. Work with me instead of worrying about me. She held out her hand. Partners, remember? He took her hand, and Lyra felt warmth flow between them. Not dragon magic, just connection. Family. Partners, he agreed. Even when you're being impossibly stubborn. Genetic, your fault. They stood there in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Torvin burst through the door. We have a situation. Of course they did. The situation turned out to be a delegation from the Eastern Territories, the same ones who'd been testing borders. They'd arrived under flag of truce, demanding to speak to the king, and they'd brought someone with them, Kira Draven. She stood in the throne room, flanked by Eastern guards, looking exhausted and beaten but alive. When she saw Lyra, relief flooded her face. Thank the stars, I was afraid they'd killed you already. Killed me? Lyra approached carefully. What are you talking about? My grandmother. She's not dead. I told you, she has contingencies. We watched her turn to ash. That wasn't her, that was a decoy, a construct animated by blood magic. Kira pulled free of the guards. They didn't try to stop her, and stumbled toward Lyra. She knew you might win, prepared for it, created a duplicate to take the killing blow while she escaped. Ice flooded Lyra's veins. Where is she? Here, in this fortress, hiding among the staff, the guards, someone you'd never suspect, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Kira grabbed Lyra's shoulders. The tribunal, the trials, those were distractions. She's been planning something bigger, something that will destroy everything you've built in one move. What move? I don't know. She never trusted me completely, but it involves the coronation. Darian stepped forward. What coronation? Kira looked at him like he was insane. Yours. The ceremony scheduled for tomorrow night, the one where you officially reclaim the throne and name Lyra as your heir. You didn't know? I didn't schedule a... Torvin appeared in the doorway, holding a scroll. My king, this just arrived from the southern houses, congratulating you on tomorrow's coronation and confirming their attendance. There are similar messages from every major territory. Someone scheduled a coronation without consulting me? Someone who had access to your seal, your authority, your... Lyra's eyes widened. Velka. She scheduled it before we killed her, or thought we killed her. Sent out invitations, made arrangements, ensured every powerful person in the kingdom would be in one place at one time. A trap, Darian said. A massacre, Kira corrected. She's planning to kill you all. Every noble, every guard, every potential threat to her power. She'll blame it on the dragons or Eastern terrorists or some other external enemy. And in the chaos, she'll seize control of what's left. We cancel it, Lyra said. Send messengers, call it off. You can't. Kira shook her head. The invitations went out 3 weeks ago, before you even arrived. Canceling now would be seen as weakness, fear, instability. The kingdom is barely holding together as is. Show any sign of vulnerability, and your enemies will tear you apart. Then we turn the trap around, Darian said. Let Velka think her plan is working. Prepare countermeasures. When she strikes, we strike back, Lyra finished. Harder. They worked through the night. Torvin coordinated security, triple guards, weapons checks, magical wards on every entrance. Darian contacted the dragons, explained the situation, received promises of aerial support, and Lyra studied the coronation plans, looking for weaknesses Velka might exploit. There were dozens. The ceremony would take place in the Grand Hall, hundreds of attendees packed into one space, limited exits, perfect for a massacre. She'll use magic, Lyra said, pointing at the seating chart. Something large-scale, fire maybe, or a collapsing ceiling, whatever causes maximum casualties. Can you counter it? Darian asked. I don't know. Dragon magic is powerful, but I'm not trained in defensive spells. If she attacks with something I don't recognize, then we'll improvise, like we always do. Darian looked exhausted but determined. We've survived 300 years of corruption, dragon attacks, and a witch who wouldn't stay dead. We can survive one more night. Can we? We have to, because if we fail, if Velka succeeds, everything we fought for dies with us. The coronation began at sunset. The Grand Hall had been transformed, banners hanging from every surface, flowers imported from across the kingdom, a throne platform rebuilt specifically for this ceremony. Nobles arrived in waves, dressed in their finest, pretending the kingdom wasn't teetering on the edge of collapse. Lyra stood beside the throne, wearing formal robes that felt like a costume. The sword at her hip was real, though. She'd made sure of that. Darian sat on the throne, wearing a crown that had been stored away for 3 centuries. It looked heavy, uncomfortable, perfect. The ceremony began. A priest, vetted 3 times by Torvin, read from ancient texts about power and responsibility and leadership. Nobles swore oaths of fealty. Musicians played. Everything proceeded exactly according to plan. Lyra's senses screamed danger. She scanned the crowd, looking for anything out of place. A servant moving wrong. A guard in the wrong position. Someone who didn't belong. Nothing. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. The priest reached the final section of the ceremony. And now, King Darian Vexmore, do you accept the crown and all responsibilities that come with... The floor exploded. Not with fire or magic. With bodies. Creatures poured through holes torn in the stone, twisted things made of shadow and bone, with too many teeth and eyes that burned red. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, flooding into the hall from below. Velka's contingency. She'd been breeding monsters beneath the fortress. Screaming filled the hall. Nobles scrambled for exits. Guards tried to form defensive lines, but the creatures tore through them like paper. Protect the king! Torvin's voice cut through the chaos. But Darian was already moving, his sword drawn, cutting down creatures with the speed and strength of someone who'd been suppressed for 3 centuries and was finally, gloriously free. Lyra drew her own sword and let the dragon's power loose. Golden light exploded from her, washing over the hall in waves. Where it touched the shadow creatures, they burned. Not with fire, with pure radiant energy that dissolved darkness like acid. Half of them died in the first 10 seconds. The rest adapted. They came at her in a coordinated wave, too many to block or dodge. Lyra felt claws rake her arm, teeth snap inches from her throat. Then the ceiling shattered. Dragons poured through, 3 of them, including the massive black one who'd first spoken to Lyra. They tore into the shadow creatures with claw and flame and sheer overwhelming force. The battle became a 3-way massacre. Dragons from above, Lyra from the center, Darien and the guards from the sides. Shadow creatures died by the dozens, their bodies dissolving into smoke. And in the chaos, Lyra felt her. Velka. Not dead, not a construct. The real Velka, watching from somewhere close, feeding power to her creatures, sustaining them. Lyra closed her eyes and followed the connection. There, in the shadows behind the throne. Velka stepped out, and she looked nothing like the corpse from before. She'd fully regenerated, young, beautiful, powerful. Dark energy crackled around her hands. "Clever girl," she said. "You found me. You couldn't just stay dead? Death is for mortals. I transcended that limit centuries ago." Velka raised her hands, and the remaining shadow creatures surged toward Lyra. "But you're still flesh and blood, still vulnerable, still killable." The creatures attacked. Lyra met them with dragon fire, but there were too many, and Velka kept creating more, pulling them from darkness itself. Lyra felt her power draining, the dragon's magic running out faster than it could replenish. She was going to lose. Then Darien was beside her, his sword cutting through creatures with mechanical precision. "Not alone," he said. "We fight together." "I can't hold them all." "Then don't. Hold the center. I'll cover the flanks." They moved in perfect synchronization, Lyra's dragon fire clearing space, Darien's sword finishing what she started. 2 fighters moving as one, father and daughter united against impossible odds. Velka screamed in frustration, "You're supposed to be dead!" "So are you," Lyra shot back. "Funny how that worked out." She poured everything she had into one final burst of dragon fire, not targeting the creatures, but the source. The dark magic Velka was using to create them. The fire found it and burned. Velka's scream this time wasn't frustration, it was agony. The connection to her creatures shattered. The shadow things dissolved into smoke, gone in seconds. Velka stood alone, smoke rising from her hands where the backlash had scorched her. "Impossible," she whispered. "I spent 200 years building that spell. You can't just—" Lyra stabbed her. No dramatic speech, no final confrontation, just a sword through the heart, fast and brutal and final. "You talk too much," Lyra said. Velka stared down at the blade. "This won't? I have more contingencies, more backup plans?" Lyra twisted the blade. "Then I'll destroy those too, and the next ones, and the next, however many times it takes until you finally understand. You lost. We won. It's over." She pulled the blade free. Velka collapsed. This time, she didn't get back up. And this time, when her body began to dissolve, Lyra poured dragonfire over the remains until there was nothing left but ash and memory. No contingencies, no backup plans, no more second chances. The hall was silent except for heavy breathing and the crackle of dying flames. Darien lowered his sword. "Is it over?" "It's over." The surviving nobles began to applaud. It started slow, uncertain, then built into a roar of approval that shook the rafters. They were applauding not just survival, but victory. Not just defeating Velka, but everything she represented. The dragons landed on the throne platform. "Well fought, speaker," the Black One rumbled. "You have proven yourself worthy of the title. And the alliance. What happens now?" Lyra asked. "Now? You rebuild, you rule. You transform this kingdom into something worth protecting." The dragon's golden eyes gleamed, and we watch, guide, support, as true allies should. They spread their wings and launched through the broken ceiling, their roars echoing across the fortress. Lyra looked around the destroyed hall, shattered floors, burned walls, dead creatures dissolving into shadow. It would take months to rebuild, years maybe, but they'd survived, and survival was the first step toward something better. Darian placed a hand on her shoulder. The priest ran away. We'll have to reschedule the coronation. Good. I hated those robes anyway. Me too. He smiled, but we should probably still do it eventually, for appearances. Fine. But next time, no monsters. I'll add that to the planning requirements. The cleanup took 3 days, bodies removed, rubble cleared, damage assessed. Through it all, Lyra worked alongside servants and nobles and guards, treating everyone equally. The dragon speaker who'd saved them all, covered in dirt and sweat, helping rebuild what had been destroyed. People noticed. On the 4th day, Darian called another assembly in the courtyard. The grand hall wouldn't be usable for months. We were supposed to have a coronation, he announced to the gathered crowd. A ceremony confirming my rule and naming my heir. Velka disrupted that. Killed innocents, destroyed our sacred spaces. Angry murmurs ran through the crowd. But she failed, because we are stronger together than any curse, any conspiracy, any monster she could create. And today, I want to honor that strength. He turned to Lyra. Lyra Ashen. 6 days ago, you were a vagrant with nothing but a piece of bread and impossible courage. Today, you are my daughter, my partner, and the dragon speaker who saved this kingdom. Kneel. Lyra hesitated. I thought we agreed no kneeling. Just do it, trust me. She knelt. Darian drew his sword and placed it on her shoulder. By the authority vested in me as King of Vexmore, I name you not just heir but co-ruler. Equal in power, equal in responsibility, equal in every way. When you speak with the full weight of the crown. When you act with royal authority. And when you fight, he moved the sword to her other shoulder. You fight as a queen. The crowd erupted into cheers. Lyra looked up at Darian, stunned. You can't just make me queen. There are protocols, traditions, which I'm officially changing. Right now. Anyone object? Silence. Then Serena Grendale stepped forward. I object. The crowd went quiet. Serena approached the platform and Lyra tensed, ready for another fight. But Serena knelt. I object, she repeated, to the title co-ruler. It's too formal, too distant. She looked up, and her expression was genuine for the first time since Lyra had met her. You didn't just save the kingdom, you transformed it. Prove that power doesn't come from bloodlines or wealth or wolves. It comes from courage, from refusing to accept that the world gets to define who you are. She stood, addressed the crowd. I vote we call her what she is, the frozen king's fire, the warmth that brought him back to life, the light that drove out darkness. That's terrible, Lyra said. Way too dramatic. Then what do you suggest? Serena asked. Lyra thought for a moment. Just Lyra, Queen Lyra, if you need formality. But I'm not a title or a symbol or a story. I'm just someone who climbed a wall and offered bread because I had nothing left to lose. And became a queen anyway, Darian added. Funny how that works. He offered his hand. Lyra took it, and together they faced their kingdom. Father and daughter, frozen king and dragon speaker, two people who'd been broken by curses and circumstances and had somehow found a way to heal each other. In the crowd, Torvin saluted. Marta smiled, and somewhere in the rubble of the North Tower, the last particle of Velka's ash finally stopped smoldering. The curse was broken. The kingdom was theirs. And for the first time in 300 years, the future wasn't something to endure. It was something to build. 3 months later, the rebuilt Grand Hall hosted its first official event. Not a coronation, but a feast celebrating the new alliance with the dragons. Representatives from every territory attended, along with the dragons themselves, perched on specially reinforced platforms. Lyra stood at the high table, wearing simple robes and her sword, watching nobles and dragons interact with varying degrees of awkwardness and genuine curiosity. Still hate formal events, Darian asked, joining her. Intensely. But these people need to see us, see that we're real, stable, not going anywhere. Very queenly of you. I'm learning, slowly. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their kingdom take its first steps toward something new. Do you ever regret it? Darian asked quietly. Climbing that wall? Starting all this? Lyra thought about it. About sleeping in ditches and eating garbage and spending 6 years convinced she was worthless. About the fear, the pain, the loneliness. Then she looked at the hall, at people laughing, talking, building connections across old boundaries. At dragons and humans sharing space without violence. At a kingdom learning to heal. No, she said. I don't regret it. Every terrible thing led me here, led us here, and here, she gestured at the hall. Here is worth it. Good. Darian placed a hand on her shoulder. Because I couldn't do this without you. Yes, you could. You just wouldn't enjoy it as much. Fair point. A servant approached, informing them the speeches were about to begin. Lyra and Darian took their seats. And as the feast continued around them, nobles proposing alliances, dragons discussing territorial boundaries, a kingdom being rebuilt one conversation at a time, Lyra allowed herself a moment of peace. She wasn't a vagrant anymore, wasn't cursed or powerless or alone. She was Queen Lyra Vexmore, dragon speaker, daughter of a frozen king who'd learned to feel again. And she'd earned every impossible second of it. The speeches began. But Lyra wasn't listening. She was too busy planning tomorrow's work, trade agreements to negotiate, dragon territories to establish, corruption to root out, a kingdom to transform. There was so much to do. And for the first time in her life, Lyra had the power, the position, and the people to actually do it. The future stretched out before her, bright and terrifying and full of possibility. And she was ready.